Chapter 790. The helicopter roared past in the air. Li Huaqing lowered his head and quietly looked at the landscape that was gradually becoming desolate below. He suddenly asked, "What do you think of the result this time?" Opposite him, Prime Minister Chen Fengqing of Jianghu State was sitting quietly and reading today's new newspaper. When he heard Li Huaqing's question, he was stunned and shook his head subconsciously. After thinking for a while, he slowly said, "It's hard to say." "You don't think so?" Li Huaqing said slowly. Their private plane set off from Yuzhou today. After landing in Beijing, they went to the military area and then took a helicopter to the desert prison. Along the way, this was the first time they discussed the upcoming conversation. There's nothing to think about. He may agree or refuse. It just depends on what he wants. To be honest, his rise is so fast that it's almost a straight line. Even if he's trapped in the desert now, it doesn't affect him much. We know too little about him, so it's hard to judge his intentions. Chen Fengqing shook his head and suddenly said, "If it were Li Honghe, no, even if Li Honghe were still alive, the success rate of our negotiation would increase a lot. Unfortunately, Senior Li died too early." Li Huaqing was silent. Li Honghe's life was absolutely open and aboveboard. He might have owed everyone, but he had no qualms about Jianghu State and guarding Jianghu State. He was the best god of war in Jianghu State in the past 100 years. Even during the decline of the Li family for more than 20 years, he still guarded the border of Jianghu State with some old people of the Li family. He devoted the first half of his life to Jianghu State, and his loyalty to the country was beyond doubt. If he were still alive, they wouldn't even need to make such a big fuss about this negotiation. They just needed to get through Li Honghe's work, and the matter would be half done. But now Li Honghe had fallen, and a broken but wildly rising Li family had reappeared in Li Tianlan's hands. In general, Li Tianlan's position didn't need to be doubted. From this point of view, even the position of the Wang family of Beihai didn't need to be doubted. They were definitely on the side of Jianghu State. But whether it was Li Huaqing or Chen Fengqing, this was not what they wanted. Or more than this. Therefore, no one could tell what Li Tianlan would choose in this negotiation. Wang Qinglei's suggestion yesterday was very interesting. Chen Fengqing suddenly said thoughtfully, "President, how much of his proposal do you think is for balance, and how much is for Beihai?" "Most of it should be for the sake of balance. How can he care about the North Sea now? And as long as he agrees to cooperate with us, our plan will succeed." He knew that he couldn't escape. As for his proposal, Li Huaqing paused. Chen Fengqing didn't say anything. He just quietly looked at Li Huaqing. His eyes were very calm, and there was no extra expression on his face. Li Huaqing subconsciously shifted his gaze and said faintly, "That was my original intention. We have been involved in politics and balance all our lives. With Li Tianlan's current future and status, how can it be so easy to persuade him? If he agrees to help us, he will lose something, so we must let him gain something. This little bit of benefit won't be enough to satisfy his appetite." He spoke very slowly, and towards the end, his voice became softer and softer, as if he was trying to convince Chen Fengqing. After a brief silence, Chen Fengqing softly said, "President, I can understand your approach, but I'm afraid that some comrades might not agree to it." Li Huaqing smiled. The other party's words were very euphemistic. Other comrades not only disagreed with it, but if he made his ideas public now, Chen Fengqing might support him in this matter to a limited extent, but most people in the Prince Group would oppose it with all their strength. At that time, he would also suffer great pressure. Li Huaqing closed his eyes and sighed, feeling a little tired. "What about you?" he asked slowly. "I personally agree with your behavior in principle." Chen Fengqing nodded. In this kind of thing, he did not hesitate at all. As the god of war of Jianghu State, in more than 20 years, Gu Xingyun did not show the bearing and demeanor that Jianghu State should have. He is not qualified. But not too bad. Li Huaqing said, "It's still because Beihai is too sharp. Let's change it." Chen Fengqing remained calm. Li Huaqing sat there and thought for a long time before he whispered, "Prime Minister, do you think we did wrong? How can there be right or wrong in this kind of thing?" Chen Fengqing laughed. "But their existence is too dangerous. Or rather, their freedom is too dangerous. Hey, for hundreds of years, Beihai province has brought us too many benefits. but the Wang family of Beihai is like a bomb that can explode at any time. No force in the world has nuclear weapons, but the Wang family of Beihai does. Such a force is enough to make any president restless. It's okay when the situation is calm, but what if it happens? It's okay when the situation is calm, but what if? No one is willing to bear this kind of danger. It's just that the Wang family of Beihai is too strong. It has been glorious for hundreds of years and has always stood at the peak. For such a long time, there have been several large-scale chaos in Beihai, but they have the Li family around them. They have always had the Li family. This may be the most successful alliance in history. Every time the Wang family of Beihai faces huge internal troubles, the Li family will stand up to protect the Wang family of Beihai and help them get through the crisis, so that many people in power can't find a chance. And now? Li Huaqing shook his head. No, not just now. You and I both know that some plans actually started more than 20 years ago. When the Li family just declined, Jianghu state secretly set up something against the Wang family of Beihai. But at that time, the Wang family of Beihai was still strong. But now the opportunity has come. This time, the Wang family of Beihai still has internal troubles, but no one helps them to resist external troubles. They don't have the Li family around them. Under such circumstances, I really don't want Li Tianlan and the Li family to stand by their side again. Only by controlling the Wang family of Beihai can Jianghu state really have no hidden worries and be really safe. Nuclear weapons are the bottom line of Beihai, but even if we take away their so-called bottom line, they are still the world's leading superpower. Why can't they figure it out? Chen Fengqing was silent for a long time, then chuckled. Because of the sense of security. Sense of security. Li Huaqing raised his eyebrows. They have a sense of security when the nuclear weapons are in their hands, but we don't, and vice versa. Chen Fengqing said, this kind of contradiction can't be reconciled. Li Huaqing lit a cigarette and smoked in silence. This is not a problem we should consider. Beihai is right, and so are we. It's just that our positions are different. Chen Fengqing said, you should think about yourself. He looked at Li Huaqing with a somewhat complicated look in his eyes. Once you want Li Tianlan to gain something, you can imagine the pressure you will bear. I will retire next year. Even if you can be re-elected, my successor may not. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Finally, he said softly, you know what I mean. If that's the case, your re-election can't even protect the academics. Your reputation and even your end may not be too good. Li Huaqing nodded, flicked the ash off his cigarette, and laughed. So what? He shook his head. In this position, I am the president of Jianghu State. I have to do something for Jianghu State. He paused and continued, for Jianghu State. Chapter 791. The plane sped through the air. The documents clattered in his hands. Wang Xianxia lowered his head and quickly flipped through the documents. His expressionless face tightened, and his eyes were dignified and serious. The documents in his hands were very thick, page by page. A large number of economic data and public opinion surveys were listed, as well as analysis of the future. From time to time, some weird-looking graph appeared in the dense text. Wang Xianxia looked at it quietly without saying a word. Compared to Li Tianlan, or even compared to any other young man of his generation, Wang Xianxia had a brilliance that others could not hide. Li Tianlan had a talent for martial arts that Wang Xianxia could not reach, but Wang Xianxia also had a view of the overall situation that Li Tianlan could not match at this stage. The environment he grew up in had already determined what kind of position he would stand in the future and what kind of vision he would have in the future. Whether in the judgment of the overall situation or the handling of daily affairs, his actions were natural and familiar. During the 1 year in charge of the Wang family of Beihai, all of Wang Xiangxiao's actions might not be said to be brilliant and bold, but they were absolutely stable. His grasp of the family's affairs, his attitude toward the enemy, his measures in Beihai, his understanding of Jianghu State, and his future plans showed that he was a very qualified patriarch. The rotors hummed as they whistled through the air. In the slightly bumpy cabin, Wang Xiangxiao quickly flipped through the documents, and his eyes suddenly froze. The parliament decided to open number 004 Armament Depot to Shenyuan City? He raised his head and glanced at Firmament sitting opposite him. Wang Tianzong was seriously injured and missing. Di Jiang was expelled from Beihai. After Wang Tianzong became the patriarch, he had been following Wang Xianxia like his bodyguard and half of his teacher. Firmament, who had never had a clear position in the Wang family of Beihai, had now become the deputy commander of the Beihai Corps. His status was above several deputy commanders and second only to Wang Xianxiao, who was also the commander of the corps. He was in charge of the daily affairs of the Beihai Corps. The document Wang Xianxiao was asking about was also handed to him by him. The transmission channel of the document was also on the right track. The Army Ministry drafted the document, the President signed it, and the cabinet remained silent. The document was again passed to the Army Ministry, and Dongqing Wudi signed it himself. Now, the only procedure before the document officially came into effect was the parliamentary seal. The document was drafted yesterday, and it was delivered to the various armies in the middle of the night. Such speed could be said to be truly swift and decisive. To be precise, Li Huaqing wants to open the No. 004 Armory to Shenyuan City. At present, this matter is controversial, so it hasn't been discussed in the parliament yet. However, there should be many different opinions within the parliament. Firmament said slowly. Wang Xianxiao lowered his head and looked at the document. He frowned. The so-called number 004 armament was not a large-scale arms aid, but a set of extremely advanced semi-automatic weapons system with an extremely advanced detection system, flexible scanning range, a variety of weapon terminals, strong controllability, great destructive power, and extremely high precision. It could perfectly adapt to the ground war and also take into account part of the anti-air capability. This system could be said to be one of the signboards of the military of Jianghu state in recent years. The lack of a clear code number did not mean that it was not valued, but it was more secretive. If such a system was fully equipped, putting aside the high cost of construction and maintenance, it was self-evident that it would contribute to the development and rise of Shenyuan City. With this system, Emperor Dong's palace and Shenyuan City were almost invincible. Li Huaqing proposed to open the number 004 armament to Shenyuan City, which was full of courage. If this deal could really succeed, then the relationship between Emperor Dong's palace and the academics would undoubtedly be greatly eased. On the other hand, this weapon system could also greatly influence Li Tianlan's choice and position. What's the possibility of the parliament passing it? Wang Xianxiao asked. It has Dongqing Wudi's signature. Firmament's tone was very tactful. But Wang Xianxiao understood the meaning of this sentence. Dongqing Wudi wanted to equip Shenyuan City with the 004 system. Not to mention whether this would affect the cooperation between the giant group and the southeast group. When it came to the specific system, everyone wanted it. When Wang Tianzong was here, the Beihai Corps also applied for it twice, but they were both rejected. Now, the system was given to Shenyuan City, which showed the obvious intention of roping them in. If the parliament passed it, the giant group and the southeast group might still cooperate, but Dongqing Wudi was bound to be more conservative in the following game. After all, he was soft-hearted. What about the southeast group? Opposed? Opposed when their ally made it clear that they wanted it? That was what the academics wanted to see most, wasn't it? What do you think? Wang Xianxiao suddenly said. It depends on how determined you are. Firmament smiled. Wang Xianxiao raised his eyebrows. It's not that the Corps can't provide a weapon system comparable to 004. Firmament whispered. In terms of weapon terminals, our combination is even more reasonable. Wang Xianxiao was silent for a moment. Of course, he knew which system of the Beihai Corps Firmament was talking about. But at present, 004 is indeed the most suitable system for Shenyuan City. Wang Xianxiao said. Different weapon systems had different focuses. For example, the desert prison of Jianghu State and the Sky Eye system equipped with several top field armies. In terms of power alone, because this system could be said to have the most powerful firepower of all weapon systems. But its precision could also be said to be the worst. The desert prison and the field armies didn't need high precision at all. What they needed was the explosive force on the battlefield that could cover everything in an instant. The Sky Eye, which could almost kill an invincible realm expert at the peak, was undoubtedly the best choice. The 004 system of Jianghu State had the most balanced performance. Its various performances might not be the best, but it had no shortcomings. The scope of investigation, the precision of weapons, the intensity of firepower, the scanning and identification. It had everything that should be and should not be. 004 was the most suitable system for guarding a city. The Wang family of Beihai certainly had its own weapon system. Their weapon system was even better than 004's in some aspects. It was more precise and faster. But correspondingly, the range of the Wang family of Beihai's weapon system was very small. In terms of adaptability in various situations, it was slightly worse than 004's. Wang Xianxia thought silently, nodded, and then shook his head. But compared to Jianghu State, we are the most suitable ally for Shenyuan City. Li Tianlan can't be unaware of this. Firmament said quietly. That's true, but in the end, that's a matter for the future. I'm not saying that Li Tianlan doesn't have a long-term vision, but in many cases, even if he sees it, he may not be willing to think about it. We can't bet on whether he's willing to think about the future or not. The situation is here. If we want to persuade Li Tianlan to cooperate with us, we have to offer at least what Jianghu State can offer, or even more. Otherwise, this negotiation is over. Firmament nodded. Before he spoke, a loud voice sounded in the helicopter's cockpit in front of them. Report. Firmament raised his eyebrows, stood up, and said to Wang Xianxiao, I'll go and have a look. Wang Xianxiao nodded and continued to flip through the documents in his hand. Firmament left quickly, and came back even faster. In less than 2 minutes, he came back to Wang Xianxiao and said with a strange look, We seem to be a little fast. What do you mean? Wang Xianxiao smiled. Ahead. Firmament coughed. According to the signal, we are less than 3 kilometers away from the President and the Prime Minister's special plane. Wang Xianxiao raised his head and looked at Firmament. Firmament was also looking at Wang Xianxiao. Are there any missiles on our helicopter? Wang Xianxiao suddenly asked. Firmament's body trembled violently. Wang Xianxiao burst out laughing. I'm just kidding. Why are you so nervous? He stood up, looked ahead and said calmly, Let's slow down. Anyway, we can't get ahead of them. Chapter 792. At 11:15 in the morning. The helicopter from Yuzhou slowly landed in front of the desert prison. The desert prison was headed by Xiao Mahai, the warden. All the prison guards in uniform stood in front of the prison gate to greet them. Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai stood at the forefront of the crowd. Xiao Mahai, who stood in front of all the prison guards, stood a step behind Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai. He lowered his head and looked like a slave. The sun shone on the yellow sand. In the light, Li Tianlan, who was originally a prisoner, held a stunning beauty in his arms. He looked more like the owner of the prison. In fact, it was true. And in the face of this scene, no one in the prison felt that there was anything wrong with it. Li Huaqing, who walked out of the cabin and saw this scene, still smiled and narrowed his eyes subconsciously. Chen Fangqing, who followed Li Huaqing, had a gloomy look in his eyes. It was not for any other reason. But in the heart of this giant who paid great attention to national interests and principles, Li Tianlan was a prisoner here. No matter what, he was a prisoner now. It was one thing for him to be the overlord of this place. Now he came here with Li Huaqing. Even if it was just a pretense, Li Tianlan should not be here. He should be locked up in prison. This was the rule. Even if it was only on the surface. But it was obvious that neither Li Tianlan nor Xiao Mahai thought about this so-called rule at all. Li Huaqing turned his head and glanced at Chen Fangqing calmly. Then he strode toward Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan, who should have been flattered, took 2 steps forward and took the initiative to hold Li Huaqing's hand. But his expression was very calm, even reserved. Hello, Mr. President. Li Tianlan shook hands with the 2 giants one by one. Hello, Prime Minister. Tianlan, long time no see. How are you doing here? Li Huaqing said with a smile. The last time he met Li Tianlan was before Li Tianlan came to the desert prison. At that time, the two might not have completely fallen out with each other, but their thoughts were different, and their relationship had gradually drifted apart. Later, Li Huaqing's right-hand man, Deputy Minister Hua, who was also a giant, also came once. Since then, the relationship between the two parties had become even colder. But now that they were face to face, neither of them showed any other emotions on their faces. It's good here. Li Tianlan nodded. It's quiet and suitable for meditation. How is meditation something a young man should do? Your Highness is still young, so you should be full of vigor, singing proudly all the way. Chen Fengqing said with a smile. Let's go in and talk. It's rare that I have time today. I want to have a good chat with Tianlan. Li Huaqing smiled and waved his hand. There's no hurry. Li Tianlan laughed. You may not have received the news. Today, the desert prison is very expensive. The President and the Prime Minister have graced us with their presence, but behind us, the North Sea Patriarch's helicopter is about to arrive as well. Why don't you wait and chat with us? Li Huaqing's gaze instantly deepened. He looked at Li Tianlan and said nothing. Two helicopters arrived at the desert at the same time. If Xianxia's helicopter could receive the signal from the front, how could their helicopter not receive the signal from the back? Even if they really couldn't receive it, when Xianxia and the others passed over the Beijiang military region, someone had already reported to them. Li Huaqing was in a hurry, not because he wanted to deliberately neglect Xianxia, but because he wanted to take this opportunity to make Xianxia hesitate and misunderstand. He didn't mind Li Tianlan's delay. What he cared about was Li Tianlan's words, which seemed to be intentional yet unintentional. He was talking about the North Sea Patriarch, not the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. If Li Tianlan was an old fox who had been in the superstructure of Jianghu state all his life, this sentence could almost judge his position. But this sentence was said by such a young Li Tianlan. Li Huaqing really hoped that the other party's words were just unintentional. All right. Li Huaqing nodded with a smile. He glanced at Qin Weibai, who stood quietly beside Li Tianlan, and said with a smile, Patriarch Qin, long time no see. Qin Weibai smiled without saying a word. She was elegant and demure, low-key without any sharpness. Chen Fengqing also nodded to Qin Weibai. When he visited Switzerland 2 months ago, he visited Qin Weibai alone, who had become the patriarch of the Lin clan. He also vaguely talked about the situation in Jianghu state, but neither the Lin clan nor Qin Weibai expressed their position, which was also the reason why he felt uncertain. The whistling sound swept from the high sky behind them. The helicopter in the distant sky was getting closer and closer. The strong airflow brought flying yellow sand. Li Tianlan raised his head and watched quietly. The helicopter without any weapons landed next to Li Huaqing's private plane. Xianxia, who looked calm, walked out of the cabin steadily. He nodded to Li Tianlan first, and then raised his hand to salute Li Huaqing and Chen Fengqing. Firmament followed Xianxia and also saluted. It was a tradition that the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai was also the commander of the Beihai Corps. Under normal circumstances, the commander of the Beihai Corps had no clear rank in the military of Jianghu state. But the deputy commander of the Beihai Corps was a veritable general of Jianghu state. And the treatment enjoyed by the commander often depended on the strength of the patriarch. For example, Wang Tianzong. In the meeting of the giants of the parliament, only Wang Tianzong was qualified to sit opposite Li Huaqing in the whole Jianghu state. Wang Xianxia was obviously not qualified now. He took the initiative to salute. Combined with his current status, it was a low profile. Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes and chuckled. Why didn't Xianxia inform us in advance that he would come to the desert? His words were light, but they were meaningful. Firmament took out a document and said calmly, President, we have already reported to the army headquarters before we set off and got the permit signed by Minister Dongqing. The corner of Chen Fengqing's mouth twitched slightly, but he did not speak. Your Highness President Prime Minister, shall we go in and talk? Xiao Mahai, who had been ignored, put Li Tianlan directly in front and said cautiously, The prison has prepared a banquet to welcome you. Welcome you, Li Huaqing said to himself. He seemed to find it interesting and laughed. Well, let's go in and talk. They walked into the prison canteen at the same time. There was a small private room in the canteen that was specially used to provide food for the warden. It was well decorated. At this time, the private room was full of wine and dishes. Wang Xianxia and Firmament, who were walking at the back, glanced at the table and slightly raised the corners of their mouths at the same time. Li Huaqing and Chen Fengqing were calm, but a haze flashed in their eyes. Just because of the table of wine and dishes. Whether it was the wine or the dishes, this table was a real state banquet. And it was a very grand state banquet. It was exquisite, luxurious, and even extravagant. Chen Fengqing could not help pointing to the food on the table and looked at Xiao Mahai with a smile. Warden, the food in the desert prison is good. The table in front of us, even if we don't count the wine, is worth 6 figures. Your food and beverage expenses are very high. Someone reported that someone in the prison misappropriated funds. Is it true? Xiao Mohai smiled and said respectfully, as long as it makes His Highness feel comfortable. I don't care about other things. Li Huaqing paused. Chen Fengqing's face was a little livid. As long as it made Li Tianlan feel comfortable? He didn't care about other things? He was the king warden here, not anyone's slave. Wang Xiangxiao's smile became more and more presumptuous. This table of wine and dishes seemed to prove Li Tianlan's attitude. He glanced at Chen Fengqing, a little playful. What are you laughing at, Xiangxiao? Do you think it's funny here or me? Chen Fengqing was angry. Seeing Wang Xiangxiao's eyes, he immediately retorted. Wang Xiangxiao raised his eyebrows. I can't smile. He took a step forward and instantly became expressionless, looking gloomy and majestic. I can't smile. There's murderous intent. Li Tianlan suddenly said. Chen Fengqing narrowed his eyes and looked at the indifferent and gloomy Wang Xiangxiao. He followed Li Tianlan's words and said, You want to kill me? Wang Xiangxiao looked straight into his eyes and said indifferently, I didn't say it was right or not right. He took another step forward and asked word by word, I said I want to kill you. Guess, how do I want to kill you? Chapter 793. Chen Fengqing's face suddenly became extremely pale. It was not because of fear. The dense sword intent continued to spread out with Wang Xiangxiao as the center, occupying every corner of the box. The sword energy was so dense, so small, but so sharp. The ferocious sharpness enveloped Chen Fengqing, stabbing him all over like fine needles. He felt a little pain, a little itchy, and a little numb. His body trembled uncontrollably under the shroud of sword qi, but his eyes remained calm and cold. After all, this was not a public place. In a public place, Wang Xiangxiao, who represented the Wang family of Beihai and the Beihai Corps, saluted Chen Fengqing with a serious face. The various measures of Beihai would be reported to the cabinet in name, so no one could find any fault with it. But now, in such a private place, Wang Xiangxiao no longer hid anything, and the ferocious killing intent completely pounced on Chen Fengqing's face. At this moment, no matter how powerful Chen Fengqing was, his life and death were also in the hands of Wang Xiangxiao. If Li Tianlan didn't make a move. Li Huaqing subconsciously glanced at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan had already sat down with his arm around Qin Weibai's shoulder, and conveniently passed a delicate side dish to Qin Weibai. The sharp sword energy was completely obliterated the moment it approached him. He did not look up, as if he was really eating peacefully. Li Huaqing's heart sank slightly. He took a deep breath and said, Enough, what's wrong with you? It's just a joke. Wang Xiangxiao said with a smile. He was not afraid of offending Chen Fengqing. The relationship between them had long been clear. No matter how humble he was, he could not dispel the plot of Chen Fengqing and Li Huaqing. On the surface, Wang Xiangxiao did not mind abiding by the rules, but in private, Wang Xiangxiao was also a proud person. How could he bear this kind of humiliation? He came here with the intention of destroying the place. He didn't dare to kill anyone, but he didn't mind making the other party suffer a little. The Prime Minister seems to be too nervous. The surrounding sword energy slowly disappeared. Wang Xiangxiao patted Chen Fengqing on the shoulder and said in a very sincere tone, It's really just a joke. How dare I kill people? Chen Fengqing took a deep breath, and his pale face became livid. You can try. He looked at Wang Xiangxiao and said slowly, Why don't you try? Let's turn a joke into a fact and see what happens. Now is not the time. Wang Xiangxiao smiled and adjusted Chen Fengqing's neckline. Kill the Prime Minister of Jianghu State? TSK. This is too much. But I remember that the Wang family of Beihai has done something even worse. As for the consequences. He chuckled and narrowed his eyes. That seems to be the beginning of the Wang family of Beihai standing at the peak. Am I right? Something worse than killing Chen Fengqing. Li Huaqing and Chen Fengqing's pupils dilated. He shrank back and stared at Wang Xiangxiao in silence for a long time. Wang Xiangxiao's expression was easygoing and calm. But everyone could feel a hint of madness in his expression. Is this a threat? Or a warning? An elegant voice suddenly rang out. It was as light as the clouds and the wind. Qin Weibai looked at Wang Xianxiao, and her eyes were so bright that he couldn't look at them directly. This is a joke. Wang Xianxiao spread his hands and laughed. Eat. He asked Firmament to take a seat and took the initiative to pour himself a glass of wine, drinking it in one gulp. Tisk. Wang Xianxiao put down the glass and said with a smile, Good wine. He gave Xiao Mahai a thumbs up and said with a smile, General Xiao is even more courageous. As long as your highness and madam are satisfied. Xiao Mahai, who was standing behind Li Tianlan, said in a flat tone. The moment he heard Chen Fengqing's words, he realized that the wine and dishes on the table in front of him seemed to have caused a misunderstanding between the two giants, and even made them think that it was Li Tianlan's attitude. Xiao Mahai really didn't think so much. He had put everything on Li Tianlan. It didn't matter whether it was the president or the prime minister. As long as Li Tianlan was satisfied, all the problems such as funding were small problems. That was what he really thought. Now hearing Wang Xianxiao's praise, his indifferent words could be regarded as an explanation. Let's eat. Li Huaqing sat down casually and picked up the chopsticks. Chen Fengqing also sat down and didn't speak for a while. Even if he had 1,000 words in his heart, he had to admit that at this time his momentum was really suppressed by Wang Xianxiao, and he seemed to be a little less confident. What are you doing here? Li Tianlan asked casually, glancing at Wang Xianxiao while putting food into Qin Weibai's bowl. I want to talk to you. Wang Xianxiao looked at Li Tianlan and said seriously. No, you're here to threaten me. Li Tianlan said. What he said just now was not only a threat to Li Huaqing, but also to Chen Fengqing and Li Tianlan. Everyone present knew why the president and the prime minister appeared in the desert prison at this time, and they also knew why Wang Xianxiao appeared here. The situation was obvious. If Li Tianlan agreed to the request of the two giants, the Wang family of Beihai would no longer have the possibility of turning the tables. They might still be the top wealthy family and superpower in the dark world in the future, but losing their biggest trump card was obviously not something Wang Xianxiao could accept. Wang Xianxiao, who had no hope of turning the tables, was bound to use all means to reverse this possibility. Anyone could be on Wang Xianxiao's list and suffer the most hysterical targeting of the Wang family of Beihai. This time was different from the last time. Last time, Wang Xianxiao showed his strength to the world. Now, Wang Xianxiao directly put his madness in front of the most important parties. I didn't mean that. Wang Xianxiao said slowly, No matter what, this is not my intention. I want to have a serious talk with you. Okay. Li Tianlan nodded. After the meal. Let's wait until the prime minister and the president leave. Wang Xianxiao smiled and deliberately put the prime minister in front. Okay. Li Tianlan still said the same thing. Li Huaqing's face changed for a moment and then returned to normal. The meal was unusually dull. But with Qin Weibai beside him, Li Tianlan still ate with relish. After lunch, Wang Xianxiao took the initiative to leave. Xiao Mahai arranged a meeting room for the prison. Li Tianlan went in with the two giants. Xiao Mahai stood outside the meeting room as a security guard. Li Tianlan sat quietly in the chair and said nothing. Tianlan, do you have any thoughts? Li Huaqing took the initiative to ask. What? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. Wang Xianxiao's attitude during the meal. Li Huaqing went straight to the point. Arrogant and domineering. Don't go too far. Chen Fengqing said coldly. This was his attitude, not only to Beihai, but also to Wang Xianxiao. We've already put a knife to his neck. Do you expect him to be respectful? Li Tianlan said disapprovingly. First of all, no one put a knife on his neck. We just hope that Beihai province can respect the order and rules of Jianghu state more. Li Huaqing looked at Li Tianlan and said seriously, No one in Jianghu state wants Beihai to have different rules of the game from Jianghu state. They are qualified to stand at the top, but standing at the top doesn't mean that they can take things that don't belong to them. We just take away this part. The Wang family of Beihai will still be good in the future. Everyone, including me and the Prime Minister, including the Wang family of Beihai, all of us should take what belongs to us, and let go of what doesn't belong to us. Like me? Li Tianlan smiled playfully. Like what about me? What doesn't belong to me? Li Huaqing was stunned and quickly exchanged a look with Chen Fangqing. Tiannan. Chen Fangqing said, Tiannan shouldn't belong to you, but to Jianghu state. Ha! Li Tianlan's voice was a little cold. Then what should belong to me? Kunlun City. Li Huaqing's deep voice sounded. It should belong to you. If you want, Kunlun City can belong to you from now on. Chapter 794. Wonderful Free Reading. If you want, Kunlun City can belong to you from now on. Li Huaqing's voice was calm, not impassioned, as if he was talking about a normal trifle. However, if these words were heard in the outside world, it would undoubtedly set off an extremely violent storm. Kunlun City represented the Special Warfare Group. All of these could belong to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan didn't like the name Kunlun City. But it didn't matter. More than 20 years ago, Kunlun City was called Zhuanyuantai. Now, as long as Li Tianlan nodded, he could change Kunlun City to Tianlan City, or even continue to call it Zhuanyuantai. No doubt. This was the offer of the Jianghu State Parliament. Exchange Kunlun City for Tiannan. Did you give up on Gu Xingyun? Li Tianlan was silent for a long time before he asked. Even he didn't expect Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing to be so bold to exchange Kunlun City for Tiannan, which showed their determination and the serious consequences of refusing this negotiation. No one denies Gu Xingyun's contribution to Jianghu State over the years. He has made contributions, but to be honest, he hasn't done a good job over the years. We believe in his potential and are willing to hand over the safety of Jianghu State to him. Chen Fangqing looked at Li Tianlan and said sincerely, Your Highness, you must believe that even in the past 20 years, no one has looked down on the Li family. What we are willing to hand over is what we think we deserve. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. He knew that Chen Fangqing was telling the truth. No one could look down on the Li family. In fact, since Chen Fangqing entered the parliament, whether he was a member or elected to the Li family, he would take time to visit Li Honghe every year. Not only Chen Fangqing, but also Hua Zhengyang of the academics, Zhou Yunhai of the North Group, Thunder God of the Giant Group, and Yi Dongsheng of the Southeast Group. Every year, the six would send representatives to go through the motions to show their respect for Li Huaqing, the veteran. But that was all. However, Chen Fangqing's words obviously didn't mean that. Li Tianlan had heard from Li Honghe a long time ago. When talking to people, don't listen to what they say, but listen to what they don't say. What we are willing to hand over. What we think we deserve. Li Tianlan thought about it. The underlying meaning of this sentence is that we shouldn't get what we don't want to give? Li Tianlan laughed. He looked at Chen Fangqing and said seriously, You mean I can get Kunlun City, but I don't deserve Tiannan, right? The headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace can be built in Tiannan. Li Huaqing continued. The negotiation this time was very direct, almost without any foreshadowing. But every inch of the territory of Jianghu State should be affected by the will of Jianghu State. We allow the emergence of new groups, but we don't allow the emergence of transcendental forces that can transcend above Jianghu State. At this point, Tianlan, you should understand that Zhongyuan province for the Dongqing clan and Beihai province for the Wang family of Beihai are two completely different concepts. Li Tianlan nodded. It was well known that Zhongyuan province was the backyard of the Dongqing clan. But the daily operation of Zhongyuan province was still under the control of the parliament and the rules of the game of Jianghu State. A series of personnel appointments in Zhongyuan were operated by the Dongqing clan within the giant group. It could be regarded as the will of the group, or the collective will, but the collective of Jianghu State. Beihai province was completely different. All their appointments were directly issued by Mount Dibing, which was undoubtedly a dictatorship in the eyes of the parliament. Moreover, they were outside the system of Jianghu State, but they controlled the Southeast Group remotely. Their power had developed to such an extent that it could be said to be the real peak. Even if the Wang family of Beihai was not disloyal, for those in power, they would be uneasy and find ways to weaken it. The rise of Li Tianlan made the parliament see even worse signs. They fully affirmed Li Tianlan's potential. Before he entered the invincible realm, they wanted him to replace Kunlun City, which was enough to prove this point. Now almost no one would doubt Li Tianlan's future achievements. At the age of 20, if he became the god of war of Jianghu State, it was enough to protect Jianghu State for decades, and even make Jianghu State a dominant power in the dark world. No one was willing to kill Li Tianlan, but the premise was that he knew his position. With the rapid development of Shenyuan City on the right track, Tiannan had made more and more people feel uneasy. All kinds of signs showed that, as time went by, Tiannan would become the second Beihai province sooner or later. This was the situation that Jianghu state absolutely did not want to see. So Li Huaqing and Chen Fengqing came here at the same time. They wanted to pull Li Tianlan to the right position, such as the position of the god of war of Jianghu state. Then slowly control Tiannan in the name of the parliament. At the same time, Li Tianlan would play a key role in the game between the parliament and Beihai. This was the most satisfactory result for them. But this was not the result that Li Tianlan wanted. To be honest, there was no problem of whether it was a loss or not to exchange Kunlun City for Tiannan. The god of war of Jianghu state had a high position and power. He kept the peace of a country by himself, and his status was transcendent. Li Huaqing and Chen Fengqing were indeed very sincere. But Li Tianlan preferred a place where his family could slowly accumulate wealth and relax in peace. Li Tianlan did not think that Li Huaqing and the others were wrong, nor did he think that he was wrong. For so many years, there have been many unexpected situations in Beihai. Although these accidents are not all bad, we think it's time to make some changes. Any change will have a price, and it will also cause chaos. Tianlan, we hope to leave the desert prison immediately and temporarily take charge of Beihai to help stabilize the order in Beihai. What do you think? Li Huaqing looked at Li Tianlan seriously and asked. Li Tianlan's heart was in awe, and his face was expressionless. A heavy pressure came from all directions. From beginning to end, neither Chen Fengqing nor Li Huaqing mentioned Tiannan much. They mostly talked about Beihai. But the present of Beihai was the future of Tiannan. Li Tianlan's answer also represented a lot of things. Li Tianlan was silent. Li Huaqing and Chen Fengqing's eyes were fixed on Li Tianlan, and their eyes were burning. We still have to believe in Beihai. After a long time, Li Tianlan slowly said, I believe that Beihai has a way to deal with some chaotic situations. Beihai province does not need me to take unnecessary steps to stabilize the order. After all, things have not developed to the worst extent. He spoke very slowly. Almost word by word, he said it very cautiously. But the key words still sounded extremely harsh to the ears of the two giants. Unnecessary steps. Li Huaqing's eyes suddenly narrowed. Chapter 795. Next to the conference room was a small lounge. It used to be the office of a deputy warden, but with the transfer of the powerful deputy warden, although the position was still maintained in the desert prison, the deputy warden no longer had an office. Instead, it was transformed into a lounge. That was the real superfluous move. Although the desert prison was important, it was a small place, and there would be no meetings all year round. When the news of Li Huaqing and Chen Fengqing's inspection of the desert prison came, Xiao Mahai sent someone to clean the conference room and swept a thick layer of dust. The conference room was not high class, and the lounge next to it was even more so. Fortunately, it was clean and tidy after cleaning. Wang Xianxia sat on the shabby sofa in the lounge and looked up at the oil paintings on the wall, which could be bought with 100 yuan. His expression was unusually calm. The conference room was soundproof. The sound inside was isolated, and it was quiet. Wang Xianxia did not know the result of the negotiation. He picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea. Out of the corner of his eye, a dreamlike figure just passed by the lounge. Wang Xianxia straightened up subconsciously. Qin Weibai, who passed by the lounge, turned to look at him and nodded slightly. Without any hesitation, Wang Xianxia made an inviting gesture through the transparent window. His eyes were still calm. It was a kind of calm that was almost empty. There was no confidence or anxiety. He was so calm that it was chilling. Qin Weibai's bright eyes blinked. She hesitated, then pushed the door and walked into the lounge. Hello, Patriarch Qin. Wang Xianxiao's voice was soft and quiet. After the destruction of the Samsara Palace, Qin Weibai jumped from the number 2 figure of the Samsara Palace to the patriarch of the Lin clan, a hidden giant. The news had not spread wildly in the dark world, but it was not a secret. It was similar to the Lin clan. Even if they were hidden, how could the world not know of their existence? Not to mention other things, some of the branches of the Lin clan that spread all over the world were a force to be feared. The Lin clan had many branches. Their forces were loose, but they were extremely large. They had not had internal strife for hundreds of years. If the forces of all the branches were added together, it was a force far beyond the Wang family of Beihai. However, it was impossible for the Lin clan to make use of all the branches. Under any circumstances, the Lin clan could be said to be a retreat for the Wang family of Beihai. However, the battle in Eastern Europe made Lin Fengting put down a lot of stubbornness. From the moment Qin Weibai became the patriarch of the Lin clan, the years of friendship between the Wang family of Beihai and the Lin clan seemed to have disappeared. What's the matter? Qin Weibai sat down opposite Wang Xianxia. Her slender legs were crossed. She looked dignified and elegant, with a strong sense of alienation. I have 2 things to ask. Wang Xianxia nodded. He seemed to want to light a cigarette, but after taking it out, he put it back on the table. Speak. Qin Weibai nodded. There was no extra expression on her face. What do you think of the president and the prime minister coming to the desert this time? Wang Xianxia asked. As expected, this is an inevitable choice. Tianlan is the best candidate, not only because of the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai said lightly. Wang Xianxia nodded in agreement. Letting Li Tianlan go to Beihai to clean up the mess could be regarded as using Li Tianlan's force. But Li Tianlan's value, even in the eyes of Jianghu state, was immeasurable. He was definitely more than a force or a chess piece that could be used. The Jianghu state parliament had high hopes for Li Tianlan's future. This so-called use was just the beginning of letting Li Tianlan represent the future of the underground world of Jianghu state. It could be foreseen that Jianghu state would give a very generous return this time. What can they give him? Wang Xianxia whispered. Half of Beihai? Or Kunlun City? He smiled. This should be the best thing they can offer, and the most likely thing to catch Li Tianlan's eye. You have to be clear. Jianghu state can give him half of Beihai and Kunlun City, but the Wang family of Beihai can't. Qin Weibai's voice was cold and calm. So you don't expect me to come here? Do you think the president and the prime minister can persuade him to give up Tiannan, which he depends on in the future? Wang Xianxia looked straight into Qin Weibai's eyes. This is not giving up. Tiannan is also the territory of Jianghu state. If we take a step back, Tianlan will get the whole of Jianghu state. Qin Weibai remained calm. The whole of Jianghu state? It's just the dark world of Jianghu state, which is restrained everywhere. What about Tiannan? He has Tiannan, so he has infinite possibilities. Wang Xianxia stood up and sneered. I can't give him Kunlun City, nor half of the Wang family of Beihai, but Mount Dibing will try its best to help him turn Tiannan into the second Beihai province, a land that belongs to Jianghu state, but also a kingdom that belongs to the future East Emperor alone. He looked at Qin Weibai and asked, Isn't that good? The prospects are good. Qin Weibai nodded. But how long can a person's kingdom last? If there is Beihai, Tiannan will not disappear. If there is Tiannan, Beihai will not disappear. We are the best allies. Wang Xianxia said in a sincere tone. Qin Weibai's mouth twitched. She looked a little disapproving. Please help me, Patriarch Qin. Wang Xianxia took a deep breath and said in a more sincere tone, I believe that with your wisdom, it is not difficult to see what the existence of Beihai means to Tiannan. The strength of Beihai province is not impossible to survive, but it needs a balance. More than 20 years ago, it was the Li family who maintained this balance. At that time, although Beihai was strong, from the standpoint of Jianghu state, the Li family could balance Beihai. More than 20 years later, Jianghu state has Emperor Dong's palace. The Li family was wiped out by you. Qin Weibai's voice was cold. Wang Xianxia was silent for a while and said slowly, I'm willing to pay the price as long as he is willing to talk. Qin Weibai stood up and shook her head. I will tell Tianlan your attitude, but how to choose this matter is up to him. I won't interfere. She took a step forward and was about to leave the lounge. Is she all right? Wang Xianxia suddenly asked. Qin Weibai paused and raised her eyebrows. Who? The one in Switzerland. The sword intent enveloped the lounge. Wang Xianxiao's subtle voice came along the sword intent. Li Tianlan. You don't know the one in Switzerland, right? Qin Weibai's figure suddenly became stiff. She turned around little by little and looked at Wang Xianxiao. Wang Xianxia looked calm. So calm that it was a little hollow. What do you mean? Qin Weibai asked word by word. Give me a hand. Wang Xianxia said slowly, I just want you to help me. So, Qin Weibai sneered. Is this a threat? Don't forget, if Tianlan knows about this, I don't have to say anything. No one in the Wang family of Beihai will survive. I know. Wang Xianxiao nodded. So this is not a threat. This is just a request. He slowly sat on the sofa and finally lit a cigarette. He took a deep breath. I have no choice. Now it seems that this matter is not the most fatal for Beihai. Li Tianlan and the parliament have joined hands. Whether I tell them or not, Beihai will not have a chance to win. His voice was calm and a little crazy. So, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I tell them or not. I can keep the secret and try to wake her up, but only if you can show me hope. He held the cigarette hard and said in a low voice, Have you been to the stage of formidable person? Ha! He took a deep breath. The weight of the whole Beihai is there. Qin Weibai looked at him silently for a long time. I don't accept threats. After a long time, she said slowly. I'm sorry. Wang Xianxiao looked at her and said, Answer me a question. Qin Weibai suddenly spoke. Wang Xianxiao was stunned and narrowed his eyes. Go ahead. What's the matter with Wang Xiaoyao? Why did he do this with you? Qin Weibai asked. Her eyes were cold and rational. Wang Xianxiao's pupils suddenly contracted, and he did not speak. Did he embarrass you? Qin Weibai smiled faintly. No. Wang Xianxiao was silent for a long time before he exhaled. I don't know. A bright light flashed in Qin Weibai's eyes. She looked at Wang Xianxiao and nodded. I see. Chapter 796. Wang Xianxiao said that he didn't know what was going on with Wang Xiaoyao. He didn't know why he officially broke with Mount Dibing. He didn't know why he betrayed Wang Tianzong. He didn't know. Most of the time, not knowing was an answer in itself. The three simple words could be described as really broad and profound. He really didn't know. He didn't know how to say it. He didn't know if he should say it. He didn't know if he could say it, or what was the use of saying it. There were countless possibilities, but they could all be described as not knowing. Wang Xianxiao sat on the sofa, his expression as calm as a rock. If this was an exchange or a deal, then he had already shown the greatest sincerity. He gave Qin Weibai the answer. In that case, would Qin Weibai help him? Then, he heard Qin Weibai's answer. I got it. Her voice was elegant and carried a kind of pure literal meaning. I got it. Wang Xianxiao looked up at her and thought, what do you know? But he didn't ask. He just said, I hope Patriarch Qin can help me. I will try to persuade Tianlan, if he doesn't agree to Zhongzhou state now. Qin Weibai said, but I won't guarantee anything. Wang Xianxiao said, and took a deep look at her. Thank you. He put out the cigarette but in the ashtray and narrowed his eyes. When he was about to say something, he suddenly noticed a faint gaze falling behind him. Wang Xianxiao turned around subconsciously. In his sight, separated by a seemingly ordinary glass, Qin Weibai was standing outside and looking at him with a calm expression. Wang Xianxiao was suddenly shocked and turned around subconsciously. Qin Weibai, who had been standing in front of him, had disappeared. The corner of Wang Xianxiao's mouth twitched, and then he found that there was no natural and rich fragrance in the lounge. Keep your so-called secret, because in many cases, even if you can say it, the person you face may not be true. Qin Weibai said, nodded, and turned to leave. Wang Xianxiao's face turned livid. He slowly sat on the sofa and finally smiled bitterly. The prison was extremely cold. The president and the prime minister came for an inspection. Everyone in the prison kept to their posts, and the prisoners were also strictly watched. The corridors of the prison seemed extremely empty. Qin Weibai walked all the way, and the sound of her high-heeled shoes on the ground echoed clearly. Xiao Qing, who felt a little lost, reorganized Li Tian. As soon as she stepped out of Lan's room, she saw Qin Weibai walking over. She froze, bit her lip, and hesitated for a moment before saying softly, Madam, I'll clean up this place from now on. Qin Weibai nodded and said casually. Xiao Qing wanted to say no, but facing this woman, She didn't have the courage to speak. She nodded silently and whispered, "What does Madam need?" "I'll take a break." Qin Weibai waved her hand. She seemed to have thought of something that she would have to endure at night. Her bright eyes became moister, with helplessness and expectation. She walked into the dormitory, took off her shoes, got into the quilt, and stared at the ceiling, thinking about how to persuade Li Tianlan. Today's negotiation was doomed to have no result. Li Tianlan really didn't intend to cooperate with Jianghu state, but he also didn't decide to join forces with the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai could see his hesitation, so Qin Weibai was not sure what the result of today's negotiation would be. But if she wanted to persuade Li Tianlan, it was necessary to talk pillow talk. There was a question that was actually very important. That was the question she asked Wang Xianxiao. And Wang Xianxiao also gave her the answer. This could make her see a lot of things clearly, and even confirm some things. In this way, she naturally knew what was the best choice for Li Tianlan. Qin Weibai closed her eyes. In the darkness, there seemed to be a blue notebook in the depths of her memory. It was not Dongqing Huangtu's notes. It was her notes that were still sleeping in Switzerland. Those memories, which she didn't know belonged to the past or the future, and whether they were illusory or real, became words engraved in the notebook in the depths of her memory. It might be a lot of stories because it involved a lot of people. But what each person recorded on the paper was only a few short sentences. It was like history or even simpler than history. It was about Wang Xiaoyao. There was only one sentence in the blue notebook, 12 short words. If you deserve to die, you will die. If you seek benevolence and get benevolence, you will not be free. Qin Weibai was deep in thought. Dongqing Wudi was waiting for a call. Maybe not just him. At this moment, many powerful figures in Jianghu state were waiting for a phone call, or a notice. Bai Qingqian sat opposite Dongqing Wudi and was silent. Since Wang Xianxiao showed the strongest side of Beihai, the situation in the northeast of Jianghu state had been very subtle. As a member of the parliament of Jianghu state, as the executive minister of the army headquarters and the commander of the border Praetorian Corps of Jianghu state, Dongqing Wudi came to the northeast to inspect the Black Dragon army more frequently, which also made it convenient for him to meet Bai Qingqian. Now Dongqing Wudi inspected the Black Dragon army again. But it was obvious that his current focus was not here at all. What will be the result? Bai Qingqian lowered her voice and asked softly. It's hard to say. Dongqing Wudi shook his head solemnly. But according to the time, it should be almost time for the result. What do you want the result to be? Bai Qingqian asked softly. In recent years, the couple's relationship, which had been frozen for many years, had rapidly warmed up, almost returning to the period when they just got married. When they were alone, the atmosphere was extremely harmonious. I don't know. Dongqing Wudi thought for a moment. It is said that Wang Qinglei privately criticized some of Kunlun City's ways of doing things. If this news is true, Kunlun City should be the biggest bargaining chip of Jianghu state. Exchange Tiannan with Kunlun City. He was silent and did not speak for a while. Exchange Tiannan with Kunlun City. No one could say that such an exchange was a loss. In other words, as long as Li Tianlan was willing to get Kunlun City, he would lead the Li family back to the peak more than 20 years ago. The god of war of Jianghu state. This position was the glory of the Li family for hundreds of years. If Li Tianlan was unwilling to give up Tiannan, it was obvious that he wanted to lead the Li family to a new path. Similar to the Wang family of Beihai. Maybe not exactly the same, but for Jianghu state, the two were essentially the same. Such a choice, for Dongqing Wudi, was also a little complicated. No matter how close his relationship with Li Tianlan was, he was still a soldier after all. He might not be disappointed with Li Tianlan, but he always felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. In fact, the president originally invited me and Chen Fengqing to go to the desert this time. Dongqing Wudi said softly. The first, second, and third giants of Jianghu state went to the desert at the same time. It was a little too much. And then? Bai Qingqian was stunned and asked. And then I'm here. Dongqing Wudi smiled. If I go, Tianlan will be a little embarrassed. If I don't go, I will face the president and the prime minister alone. Everything he does is his own choice. He paused and whispered, no matter what he chooses, I will support him. Chapter 797. When the roar of the helicopter's rotor sounded, Qin Weibai frowned slightly and opened her eyes. The light in the luxurious room had become dark. The hazy moonlight shone through the window, like a layer of gauze. Qin Weibai sat up from the bed, shook her head gently, and got up to the window. This was the highest place in the desert prison, with a wide view. Looking out from here, the traces of the helicopter leaving were still clear. The yellow sand rolled up slowly fell from the sky with a large amount of smoke and dust. The helicopter had flown far away, and only the signal lights kept flashing, looking a little determined. Another helicopter was still parked in front of the desert prison, and it seemed very lonely. Qin Weibai's eyes gradually became clear. She turned around, found a bathrobe, and walked into the bathroom to take a shower. When she came out again, she had become the calm patriarch of the Lin clan. She dried her hair and walked out of the dormitory. Outside the dormitory, a plump and enchanting young woman was walking over. When she saw Qin Weibai, she subconsciously paused, and then gently bowed and said, "Madam." Qin Weibai nodded. "Has the head of state left?" "He just left," the young woman whispered. "How was the talk?" Qin Weibai walked to the conference room and asked casually. She didn't expect to get any answer, but she didn't expect to hear the content. "I don't know the details, but His Highness and the Prime Minister seem to have quarreled, and their words were very fierce," the young woman said with trepidation. She could appear here not because she had any special ability, but because she was Xiao Mahai's sister. Because her appearance and figure were good enough, and because her charm and temperament were tempting enough. In the end, she was just an ordinary woman. She knew that Li Tianlan was a big shot, but for her, there was no big shot more impactful than the president and the prime minister. An hour ago, when she went to the conference room to deliver fruit, she clearly heard the quarrel in the conference room. On the news broadcast, the voice of the prime minister, who had always been gentle, was loud and angry. Li Tianlan was tit for tat and did not give in at all. The young woman finally understood how strong the young man whose brother had been flattering was. But when she thought of his opponent, the young woman inevitably felt a little uneasy. Qin Weibai paused and then continued to move forward. The two figures passed by the lounge. Wang, patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai Xianxia, was still sitting there. Neither fast nor slow, neither arrogant nor impatient. It seemed that he could sit there until the end of time. Qin Weibai did not stop and walked toward the conference room. Xiao Mahai, who had been guarding here, silently stepped back when he saw Qin Weibai. He lowered his head respectfully. Qin Weibai appreciated it a little. She wasn't admiring Xiao Mahai's attitude towards her. She admired Xiao Mahai's attitude towards Li Huaqing and Chen Fengqing. The ridiculously sumptuous banquet at noon had proven this point. But now, Li Huaqing and Chen Fengqing left the desert prison, but Xiao Mahai still stood there, not even sending them off. This was undoubtedly a kind of attitude. This was not the so-called proof of allegiance. It was a true attitude. Loyal and devoted. In terms of strength and ability, Xiao Mahai wasn't bad. Plus, he was the center of attention. This person could be used. "You've worked hard. Have you eaten?" Qin Weibai stopped and greeted Xiao Mahai. Xiao Mahai was obviously stunned for a moment and seemed a little flattered. He scratched his head and smiled honestly. "What would you like to eat, madam?" "Something light. Don't be too extravagant. You go and prepare. We'll have a meal together later and have a drink with His Highness." Qin Weibai's smile was faint and just right. "Okay, got it." Xiao Mahai nodded and rushed straight to the kitchen. Qin Weibai looked at his back and smiled. Then she pushed the door open and walked into the conference room. The conference room was filled with smoke. Li Tianlan sat alone in the chair, relaxed, holding a cigarette and expressionless. He didn't even notice Qin Weibai coming in. "What are you thinking about? Why are you so absorbed?" Qin Weibai walked over and stood behind him. She reached out and rubbed his shoulders. Li Tianlan put out the cigarette butt, leaned back, and took a long breath. He shook his head and said, "I'm not thinking about anything. I just think it's good to be alone for a while." "Do you think I'm bothering you?" Qin Weibai tilted her head and gently raised the corner of her mouth. Li Tianlan smiled and patted the soft little hand on his shoulder. "How was the talk?" Qin Weibai asked. "It's neither good nor bad. They want me to have a clear attitude. Li Tianlan shook his head and said, "But I didn't make a clear statement." This result was not good for either Li Tianlan or the parliament. At best, it was not the worst. Before the new result appeared, both sides could reluctantly accept it, but that was all. Therefore, in the end, this negotiation was more or less on bad terms, but not to the extent of falling out. Jianghu state might reduce its assistance to Tiannan because of Li Tianlan's current attitude. But for Shenyuan City, which was already on the right track, it would not have much impact. And Li Tianlan also needed some time to think about it before he could make up his mind. "Haven't you decided yet?" Qin Weibai asked softly. "It's easier said than done." Li Tianlan shook his head. Jianghu state had shown enough sincerity. Li Huaqing and Chen Fengqing had analyzed all kinds of possibilities for him. As long as he was willing, Emperor Dong's palace could completely replace Kunlun City in 2 or 3 years. This talk was very in-depth. Kunlun City. Tiannan. If the two sides were put on a scale, the weight was almost the same, but the position was different. It was impossible to say who was higher or lower. Li Tianlan really didn't know how to choose for a moment. Accepting the olive branch of Jianghu state and facing the possible suppression of the parliament in a few years or joining hands with Beihai to play against the parliament, the risk was the same. The key was what Li Tianlan did. Such a choice would affect Li Tianlan, Emperor Dong's palace, Shenyuan City, and even the fate of the Li family for many years to come. Li Tianlan was not indecisive, but this matter really needed to be cautious. "The promise I made was that I would not join hands with the Wang family of Beihai for the time being," Li Tianlan said softly. He would not join hands with the Wang family of Beihai for the time being. The focus of this sentence was not the second half. It was temporary. No one knew how long this temporary would last. Qin Weibai understood and said softly, "You want to see the trump card of the Wang family of Beihai?" Li Tianlan's temporary could be a long time or a short time. Now that all the superpowers seemed to be targeting the Wang family of Beihai, the parliament of Jianghu state understood that Li Tianlan would stand by for the time being and would definitely speed up the action against the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan wanted to see what the Wang family of Beihai would do to deal with the situation, see what trump card they had, and then decide whether to cooperate with them. This was completely understandable. More than that, Li Tianlan smiled and said, "It depends on the offer of the Wang family of Beihai." Chapter 798. The cabin that was completely shrouded in darkness emitted a faint light. The faint light illuminated Chen Fengqing's face into an extremely gloomy green color, looking gloomy and terrifying. The atmosphere was oppressive and heavy. Li Huaqing sat opposite Chen Fengqing, looking in the direction of the desert prison, narrowing his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. "Who?" With a long sigh, Chen Fengqing's body relaxed slightly, and his complexion gradually returned to normal. Li Huaqing smiled and said in a calm voice, "Don't mind him. Li Tianlan is not an ordinary young man. Neither is Wang Xianxia." Chen Fengqing clenched his teeth and let out a muffled snort, not saying anything. Today's trip to the desert could be said to be the biggest stain in his political career. He had been directly contradicted by 2 young people, one discussing his life and death, and the other directly questioning his standpoint. Chen Fengqing had wanted to fall out with them more than once, but in the end, he had endured it. Because he couldn't move Li Tianlan. Wang Xianxia couldn't move either. At the very least, today in the desert, in a relatively private setting, when facing those 2 youngsters, if they decided not to give him face, he could only suffer. The other party was not an ordinary young man. Of the 2 of them, one was meditating in prison. One carried the Wang family on his back and moved forward with difficulty. This pair of young people was no longer the arrogant and domineering playboys who relied on their elders. Their power and ability had already enabled them to stand at the peak of Jianghu state. Even in the face of him, the prime minister, they could maintain a fairly detached and calm attitude. Chen Fengqing closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said with a self-deprecating smile, "I'm old. It's fine if some grievances are beneficial to the bigger picture." Li Huaqing thought for a while and said softly. Chen Fengqing nodded and did not speak. He could understand the meaning of these words, and even he himself was such a person. He was indeed a prime minister who put the interests of Jianghu state above everything else. As the number 2 figure in Jianghu state and the leader of the prince group, Not everyone had the courage to decisively kill a member of his group. Chen Fengqing had done this before. He might have his own selfish motives, but he had never been ambiguous about the major issues of right and wrong for so many years. However, as time passed, especially during this period of time, his mentality gradually became unbalanced. That is coming after a long time in power, the reluctance, anxiety, and apprehension of losing power. The game between Jianghu state and Beihai had reached a critical moment. The negotiation between the parliament and Li Tianlan had also reached a critical moment. All kinds of things, constantly changing situations, surging undercurrents, rising winds and scudding clouds. But in the end, it was still because of this time next year. It was the general election of Jianghu state. This is the real focus. Everything could come to an end with this change. At the very least, there would be peace for a long time. From this year to next, it would be the last year of Chen Fengqing's term. Chen Fengqing really wanted to do something, because compared to Li Huaqing, who was likely to be re-elected next year, he really didn't have much time, especially Li Tianlan. It could even be said that he was extremely eager to make Li Tianlan agree to their conditions. Chen Fengqing dreamed of tying such a heavenly son who could serve Jianghu state for decades to Jianghu state. It was no exaggeration to say that if Li Tianlan could agree to their conditions today, then Chen Fengqing would be the real main force when Kunlun city was taken over by Emperor Dong's palace. Attacking Beihai and trapping Li Tianlan were Chen Fengqing's biggest demands in the coming year. If he did this well, it would be enough to lay the foundation for the pattern of Jianghu state in the next few decades. After next year, Chen Fengqing shook his head and hesitated to speak. Li Huaqing sighed slightly, and there was bitterness in his eyes. Next year would be Chen Fengqing's 10th year in office. For Dongqing Wudi, this was his 5th year in office. With Dongqing Wudi's prestige and achievements in the military of Jianghu state, no one could stop his re-election unless there was a great accident. He was a member of the parliament of Jianghu state, a director, and the standing minister of the army headquarters. Now, after the president and the prime minister, Dongqing Wudi ranked 3rd. After next year, when Chen Fengqing retired, the new prime minister could not be ahead of Dongqing Wudi. At that time, Dongqing Wudi would become the number 2 figure in Jianghu state, ranking 2nd only to Li Huaqing. Because of the particularity of the military, the retirement age of the main leaders of the army headquarters could be appropriately relaxed. Li Huaqing would inevitably retire in the next 5 years, but Dongqing Wudi might not. This meant that Dongqing Wudi would become stronger than he was now after next year, and the giant group would get through the period of weakness after the reshuffle more quickly. The first was the giant group. The position of the head of the cabinet had not been decided yet. This position had even become the fiercest battlefield for all parties. The prince group, the giant group, and the academics were all ambitious and had strong figures. If there had been no accident in Beihai, this position should have belonged to Wen Siyuan, the speaker of Beihai. Now, although Wen Siyuan was in a precarious situation, it could not be said that he had no competition for this position. As a result, the situation became more complicated. If it was the academics who finally got this position, it would be okay. Li Huaqing and the new prime minister could completely check and balance Dongqing Wudi. But with Li Huaqing's retention, the academics had little chance, and it was difficult for the one from the giant group to form a real tacit understanding with Li Huaqing. If this position fell into the hands of the giant group or the southeast group, it would be a nightmare. Then Li Huaqing would even face a more difficult situation than now. Shang Wang Qinglei? Chen Fengqing pondered for a long time before asking tentatively. Li Huaqing finally stopped hiding his bitter smile and shook his head slightly. He's not you. Chen Fengqing was silent. Wang Qinglei's current qualifications were sufficient. But he was not Chen Fengqing. That was to say, he was not willing to take this position. His goal was very clear, which was the position of the president 5 years later. How could he give up that position to be the prime minister 5 years in advance? Li Tianlan is the key. Chen Fengqing sighed softly. What a pity. If he could tie Li Tianlan down, he could really change a lot of things. But Li Tianlan did not say anything. It's not necessarily a bad thing that he didn't say anything. Li Huaqing said quietly, at least we still have time to operate now. I just don't know how much the Wang family of Beihai will offer. Wang Yuetong, Chen Fengqing suddenly asked. Still can't find her. Li Huaqing's eyes narrowed. No matter how tacit they were, this question was a little too sensitive. He took a deep look at Chen Fengqing and shook his head. I've looked for her but there's no news. The biggest price of the Wang family of Beihai is probably Wang Yuetong. Chen Fengqing lowered his head and said slowly. A very sharp killing intent flashed in his eyes. Chapter 799. When the sky just brightened, Wang Xianxia, who had meditated all night, opened his eyes. Uninvited, he naturally stayed in prison for a night. At dinner yesterday, a prison guard brought him some food, 4 dishes and a soup, neither good nor bad. Then no one paid attention to the new patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. No one arranged a room for him. The lounge became his guest room. Wang Xianxia was calm, as if he didn't feel the slightest shame of being ignored. He just waited quietly, waiting for Li Tianlan to meet him. The palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace and the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. The superiority of the two identities was no longer important here. What was important was that Wang Xianxia needed Li Tianlan's help, so he had to be humble. Wang Xianxia had enough psychological preparation on the way here. At breakfast, the prison guard brought the standard prison breakfast. Since he was here, Wang Xianxia ate some, then closed his eyes to rest, ready for the next negotiation. The morning passed quickly. At lunch, Xiao Mahai, the warden of Desert Prison, finally came to the door of the lounge. He smiled calmly and politely. Mr. Wang, His Highness invites you to have lunch with him. Okay. Wang Xianxia smiled and thanked Xiao Mahai politely. Xiao Mahai turned and led the way. There was a very exquisite dining hall in the prison that didn't have much spare space. It was not far from the dormitory. When he approached the dining hall, Wang Xianxia saw Shao Qing and several prison guards who were busy. They were bringing extremely exquisite dishes into the dining hall, and a plump and beautiful young woman was holding a bottle of good wine that hadn't been opened yet as she walked over. Wang Xianxia glanced at Xiao Mahai and suddenly felt a little emotional. He chuckled and said, I didn't expect General to find the most suitable path for yourself here. In the future, when the palace lord leaves the prison, whether he takes you with him or puts you elsewhere, General can be said to have a high position in the future. I congratulate General in advance. Xiao Mahai smiled calmly and said in a flat tone, I'll follow His Highness's arrangement. It doesn't matter if I stay here for a few more years. Wang Xianxia glanced at him, nodded, and pushed open the door of the dining room. Li Tianlan sat in the main seat facing the door, facing a table full of dishes, and kept eating, not waiting for Wang Xianxia to sit down. He looked relaxed and casual. Wang Xianxia remained calm, but his eyes had become extremely solemn. Sit. Li Tianlan waved his hand casually and continued eating. His eating speed was very fast, but it did not ruin his image. It was not the kind of person who would devour everything in one bite. Instead, it was a kind of speed or even a unique sense of rhythm. It was fast, precise, and meticulous. Wang Xianxia sat down opposite him, looked at him, and did not speak for a while. What do you want to talk to me about? Li Tianlan was eating, but his voice was still clear and stable. Wang Xianxia didn't seem to expect that the carefully prepared negotiation would turn out like this. After a moment of silence he slowly said, I hope Beihai can reach a comprehensive strategic cooperation with Emperor Dong's palace. Reason? Li Tianlan asked. I've already told Patriarch Qin the reason yesterday. Wang Xianxia paused. In fact, when he walked into the restaurant and did not see Qin Wei by, his heart had already sunk slightly. Li Tianlan did not speak. Wang Xianxia continued, the current development model of Emperor Dong's palace is somewhat similar to that of Beihai province, but the difference is that Emperor Dong's palace is still Emperor Dong's palace, and Shenyuan City can't represent Tiannan for the time being. You still have a long way to go to integrate Emperor Dong's palace and Shenyuan City and annex Tiannan. I don't know if you have read the history of Beihai, but I can responsibly tell you that this process will not be smooth, and it will not be smooth. If you are willing to cooperate with Beihai, Beihai is willing to give you enough support. In 10 or 20 years, Beihai province and the Wang family of Beihai will be the future Emperor Dong's palace and Tiannan. Zhongzhou state will only choose to wait and see if the two forces reach a new balance. He looked at Li Tianlan and solemnly said, This is good for both of us. That's not what I want to hear. Li Tianlan paused and looked at Wang Xianxiao. Wang Xianxiao raised his eyebrows. Talk about the situation, the future, the balance, and the reason. Why do you say this? It's obvious. If you say it, I'll understand it. If you don't say it, I'll understand it. So, it's better not to say it. He lowered his head and sped up his eating. He said blandly, if the parliament wants to cooperate with me, I only need to nod, and I can quickly replace Kunlun City and become the new god of war of Jianghu State. Tiannan will still be the headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace. This is the price they offered. So, you don't have to analyze all kinds of possibilities. Why don't you just tell me what you can give me? Wang Xiangxiao's pupils contracted slightly for a moment. He had already guessed that Jianghu State might replace Kunlun City with Emperor Dong's palace, but he did not expect Li Huaqing and Chen Fengqing to be so decisive. He picked up the wine glass in front of him and took a sip. He said in a low voice, what Jianghu State currently gives to Tiannan, with the strength of Beihai, I can also give you some weapons and armaments. Although the models are different, there won't be any difference in performance. In terms of connections, we can also build a real network for you, and Kunlun City. Li Tianlan looked at Wang Xianxiao and said blandly, this is what Jianghu State can give me. Can you also give it to me? Wang Xianxiao was silent for a long time. I can't give you Kunlun City, he said slowly, but I can give you Tiannan. As long as we reach an agreement, after the Wang family of Beihai temporarily stabilizes the situation, I can help Emperor Dong's palace take over everything in Tiannan. This is the price I can offer. His thoughts gradually became clear. Jianghu State gives you Kunlun City because it wants you to return to the old path of the Li family and protect Jianghu State. I don't deny the glory and height of the Li family in those days, but compared with Beihai, such a development model has too many restrictions. The Li family's foundation is in Jianghu State, but it can never represent Jianghu State. I suggest you choose another path, the path of the Wang family of Beihai. Beihai doesn't need to represent Jianghu State, but no one is qualified to represent Beihai except us. Tiannan can be the Tiannan of Jianghu State, but first of all, it should be your Tiannan first. Not your Tiannan, but first of all, it should be the Tiannan of Jianghu State. The two are different, very different. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and nodded. Very convincing. If we cooperate, what do you need me to do? Wang Xianxiao looked at Li Tianlan quietly. After a long time, he suddenly asked, why don't you tell me what you can do if we cooperate? Li Tianlan glanced at him and slowly drank a glass of wine. The chaos of Beihai is around the corner, he said softly. Wang Xiangxiao's eyes narrowed and he nodded. It's obvious. I can't go to Beihai when it's the most chaotic. I have to stay here. I have to stay in the desert prison. This is what I promised the council. Li Tianlan said slowly, under such circumstances, how do you want me to help you? Chapter 800. In this case, how do you want me to help you? This question was very interesting. It seemed to be a refusal, but it also seemed to be meaningful. Wang Xianxiao was silent for a while and then chuckled. His whole body slowly relaxed, and he looked a little presumptuous and casual. Your promise to the parliament is meaningless, Wang Xianxiao said quietly. Li Tianlan's eyes did not change, and he said indifferently, go on. You're not stupid, and you're not stupid either. Even if you're not being considerate, Chairman Qin will help you think of everything. Wang Xianxiao said, the parliament hopes that you will go to Beihai province to clean up the mess when or after the chaos in Beihai. But you promised them that you will not go to Beihai. You refused their request for cooperation. At least you never agreed. You stay in the desert prison and seem to be neutral. You don't want to get involved in this matter, but what good is it for you? Li Tianlan lowered his head and ate without saying a word. The Wang family of Beihai is in a bad situation now, but how good can Emperor Dong's palace be? It seems to be developing rapidly, but you can't see the crisis behind it. I can be sure that the future development of Shenyuan City will not be smooth. Now the large amount of assistance provided by Jianghu State is based on the situation that everything is still under their control. As you leave the desert prison, Emperor Dong's palace will develop rapidly, And after you want to turn Emperor Dong's palace into another Beihai, Jianghu state suppression will follow. Under such circumstances, you didn't agree to cooperate with the parliament. It seems to be neutral, but it will also make the parliament reduce its support for you. You haven't completely finalized the cooperation with Jianghu state, and you can't get the support of the Wang family of Beihai. It seems to be neutral, but in fact, it doesn't please either side. You won't do this kind of stupid thing, and Qin Weibai won't do it either. Li Tianlan still did not say a word. So I'm very happy. Wang Xianxia said quietly, I'm very happy that you can make such a promise to Jianghu state. Because such a promise, in my opinion, means that you have decided to cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai. You may not leave the prison, but I can be sure that you have enough power to affect the chaos of the Wang family of Beihai. So, we have a good cooperation? Li Tianlan put down the bowl and chopsticks, wiped his mouth with a tissue, and raised his eyes. Are you done? Wang Xianxiao narrowed his eyes and looked straight into Li Tianlan's eyes. It's a good idea, but it's all wrong. Li Tianlan smiled. I'm not as complicated as you think, and I'm not as determined as you think. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think what's there to be afraid of. I didn't completely reject Jianghu state. I just left some leeway. It's not that I've decided to cooperate with you. His Highness, God of War, Dong Huang, Heavenly Son, they're all bullshit. After all, I'm also immortal, and I'll hesitate. Tiannan is good, and so is Kunlun City. My choice is likely to affect the path of Emperor Dong's palace for many years to come. I haven't made up my mind, so I left some leeway for both sides. Jianghu state can give me a lot of benefits. I see you just to give you a chance to persuade me. Otherwise, if I go to Jianghu state to talk about cooperation now, the president and the prime minister will welcome me 100%, and Jianghu state's aid to Tiannan will also be greatly increased. Li Tianlan leaned forward slightly, knocked on the table in front of him, and looked at Wang Xianxiao. There may be a crisis behind Emperor Dong's palace, but it's not impossible to solve. It's just another path. The same glory. I don't need you to tell me which path is better. I have my own judgment. So, from your standpoint, say what you want to say. We can talk, but you should restrain your confidence. Wang Xianxiao sat opposite Li Tianlan and was silent for a long time. Li Tianlan didn't urge him. Wang Xianxiao knew very well that Li Tianlan was waiting for his offer. Even he only had one chance to make an offer. Wang Xianxiao pondered and didn't know what to say for a moment. This was the most critical part of the negotiation. In these few minutes, he had to offer a price that satisfied Li Tianlan once and for all. If it worked, they would have a happy cooperation. If it didn't work, they would drift apart. The pressure was indeed on Wang Xianxiao. Because both Tiannan and Kunlun City were good. Regardless of what Li Tianlan thought in his heart, at least the fact was clear that he did have another choice that could be equally glorious. If you stay in the desert prison, what can you do for Beihai when the chaos breaks out in Beihai? Wang Xianxiao asked slowly after pondering for a long time. This kind of cooperation might be long-term, but in the short-term crisis, what could Li Tianlan do to make him think about how to offer a price? I can do a lot of things. Li Tianlan played with the wine glass in his hand and said casually. For example, I may be able to give you some of the information you need most now. The giant group can also help you resist some of the pressure from Jianghu state. In short, I can do what you need me to do and what you want me to do, provided that you make me feel that it's worth it. Wang Xianxiao's pupils suddenly contracted for a moment. What you need me to do? What you want me to do? I can do it. He savored this sentence carefully, and his face gradually turned a little pale. Really? He really needed the information about Li Tianlan and Samsara Palace. He also needed the support of the giant group very much. But in the chaos, what he needed most was Li Tianlan's combat capability. Li Tianlan was in the desert, thousands of miles away from Beihai. How could his combat capability be reflected? Wang Xianxiao didn't believe that Li Tianlan's sword light could cross thousands of miles to fight against an invincible realm expert. He was no longer a chosen one, but an immortal. Unless he directly tore up the promise with the Parliament of Jianghu State after agreeing to cooperate. Doing so would not only damage Li Tianlan's reputation, but it would also be too intense. It depends on you. Li Tianlan said blandly. What exactly should I do? Wang Xianxia asked. Li Tianlan looked up at him. He didn't say anything. Wang Xianxia gradually understood. He narrowed his eyes, took a deep breath and then said solemnly, everything I just said can be counted as my conditions. I still hold the same view. Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai may be each other's opponents, but they should also be each other's allies. You, me, and Jianghu state all need a balance. If you are willing to cooperate, the Wang family of Beihai is willing to do its best to help you take down Tiannan and give you most of the technology and armaments you want. In addition, Beihai also needs the cooperation of Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. Cooperate with what? Cooperate with us to find our new patriarch. Wang Xianxia said word by word. His voice was a little bitter. New patriarch? Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed. Wang Yuetong. Wang Xianxia looked at the sumptuous table in front of him, and his voice was a little faint. Compared with me, my sister is more qualified to lead the current Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan was silent for a moment. Is this condition enough? Wang Xianxia stared into Li Tianlan's eyes and asked slowly. One more thing. Li Tianlan stood up and looked down at Wang Xianxia. Go ahead. Wang Xianxia nodded. Li Tianlan took a deep look at him and walked to the door of the restaurant. When he was about to walk out of the restaurant, he paused and said calmly, I want the coldness of 9 states. Chapter 801. The helicopter that stayed outside the prison for a night finally left slowly. The desert returned to peace. But Xiao Mahai, who witnessed all this, felt unprecedentedly restless. He personally sent Wang Xianxia out of the prison and watched him get on the helicopter. He watched the helicopter fly farther and farther away, turning into a small black spot under the scorching sun and finally disappearing completely. This was Li Tianlan's order. But when Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing left last night, Li Tianlan did not order him to send them off. Did this mean that His Highness had made a choice between Beihai and Jianghu state? The flying yellow sand slowly fell from the sky. Xiao Mahai slowly turned around and walked into the prison. Beihai. Jianghu state. He knew everything that was happening in the outside world. Although his position was awkward, his identity and status were there. In the entire Jianghu state, how many officers at the level of lieutenant general could there be? So he could see some things clearly. But Xiao Mahai couldn't understand Li Tianlan's choice. It was not doubt, but he really couldn't understand. He was not qualified to get in touch with the inside information and the trend of the situation. Naturally, he wouldn't know why choosing Beihai was better than choosing Jianghu state. He didn't understand these, but he knew very well that Li Tianlan, Wang Xianxia, Dongqing Wudi, Li Huaqing, Chen Fangqing, the young and old people standing at the top of the 6 groups in Jianghu state had begun to build a magnificent stage. There was bound to be a place for him on this stage. Xiao Mahai smiled contentedly. When he was about to enter the prison gate, he turned around and looked at the blazing sun outside. This world. This world. In another year, it would be the era of Dong Huang. Everyone in Emperor Dong's palace would stand on this stage. If he had a choice, Xiao Mahai still wanted to stand by Li Tianlan's side. He didn't stay here. He turned around and strode into the prison. In the dining room, Li Tianlan's meal was not over yet. The dishes on the table were almost wiped out. Li Tianlan lowered his head and slowly stirred the thick soup in front of him. He left. Seeing Xiao Mahai come in, Li Tianlan asked softly. Yes. Xiao Mahai nodded and said, it seems that he was satisfied when he left. I'm satisfied too. A voice rang out abruptly. Xiao Mahai turned his head subconsciously. In her sight, Li Tianlan's mobile phone was on the dining table, and the screen was on. A handsome middle-aged man with an unusually sharp aura was sitting quietly in his seat. Looking at his background, it seemed that he was in a ward. Xiao Mahai took a closer look. The person on the phone looked like he was in his 30s or 40s. He was handsome and could even be said to be a real beauty. However, this person's aura was too strong. It was sharp, heavy and unpredictable, so much so that people could not help but admire him. Subconsciously ignoring his appearance, he sat quietly in his seat and looked at Xiao Mahai. His smile was light, but it revealed an indescribable confidence and majesty. This kind of bearing was indescribable, but it was unforgettable. Xiao Mohai opened his mouth. Of course, he knew the man in the phone. Now in the entire Jianghu state, even if people of a certain status had not seen him, they must have heard of his name. But when the words reached his mouth, he didn't know what to say. Let me introduce myself. General Xiao. I'm a holy disciple. Wei Kunlun. In the phone, holy disciple's gentle and generous voice sounded. Currently, I'm Li Tianlan's deputy. Your Excellency. Deputy Palace Master. Xiao Mohai bowed slightly. He never minded being humble to the people around Li Tianlan. I've heard a lot about you. You're welcome, General. You've been with His Highness for so long, and His Highness is very satisfied with you. Maybe in a year or two when you come out of prison, I'll have to call you leader. Holy disciple laughed and said, Guess what His Highness just talked to me about? Xiao Mohai subconsciously turned his head and glanced at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan lowered his head and drank his soup calmly. Xiao Mohai wisely said nothing. His Highness talked to me about several positions. There will probably be changes in the army headquarters next year. Secretary General Bai will be promoted to the parliament, and the position of Deputy Secretary General of the army headquarters will be vacant. Minister Dongqing will definitely take it. In addition, Marshal Yi will probably go further next year, and he will also have to give up the position of General Staff Headquarters. This position is very sensitive. The Border Control Corps has also made some big moves recently. They are all old subordinates of Minister Dongqing, and he knows them very well. Minister Dongqing plans to move them in the near future. Thunder God is probably going to move. The Blood Battalion is close to Tiannan, and this position will also be vacant. In the Navy, the male general is probably going to be transferred, and the adjustment is not small. Xiao Mohai listened to all this with his mouth agape. Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters, Chief of General Staff, Commander of the Blood Battalion, and Commander of the Navy. 4 positions. And they were 4 positions of terrifying value. 2 of them were at the peak of lieutenant generals, and they could even be promoted to admiral. And the other 2 were real admirals, especially the second one. If he did well, he might even become a marshal. What did this mean? Well, this... Xiao Mohai opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. These 4 positions are more suitable. You choose one. Li Tianlan said slowly, You can choose whatever you want, but the General Staff Headquarters is a little difficult. You don't have enough experience, but now there is still time, so you can start. The Chief of the General Staff of Jianghu State. This was definitely the military general at the peak of Jianghu State. Xiao Mohai's heart beat fiercely a few times. He did think that following Li Tianlan would change his current embarrassing situation. But he never dreamed that this change would be so drastic. 4 positions. No matter which one he chose, it could be said to be a real step to the top. The General Staff Headquarters? He was the first to rule out this option. This was the most prominent position, but it had always been the backyard of the Southeast Group. If the cooperation between the 2 sides changed in the future, it would inevitably put Li Tianlan in a difficult position if he occupied this position. The Navy? It sounded quite good, but he didn't think he had the strength of General Nan. In his opinion, if Thunder God wanted to move, it was the most suitable to replace General Nan. The position of Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters was undoubtedly quite good, and the hidden power was unimaginable. Moreover, if he went to the Army Headquarters, his boss would be Bai Qingzhao, and his immediate boss would be Dongqing Wudi. He could completely cooperate with the 2 big shots to control the Army Headquarters. And the Blood Battalion was in Nanyun Province. It was close to Tiannan. If he chose the Blood Battalion, he could directly support Emperor Dong's palace and the Freedom Corps in the future. Xiao Mohai's mouth was dry, and he was so nervous that his whole body was trembling. Saint looked at him playfully and didn't speak. Don't worry. Li Tianlan said lightly, You can take your time to think about it. Xiao Mohai hesitated and seemed to make up his mind. He smiled bitterly and said, Your Highness, at the beginning, I did have the idea of using you to leave the desert prison. But to be honest, I'm not sure where I should go after leaving the desert prison. I still have some self-knowledge. In terms of ability, I have it, but I'm not the best. Let me go to these 4 positions. I should be able to do a good job, but I feel like I'm treading on thin ice every day. I don't think I like this kind of feeling. Li Tianlan took a sip of the soup and agreed. Xiao Mahai smiled and scratched his head. But the deputy palace master said that your highness is very satisfied with me. I think I've done a good job by your highness's side. If possible, your highness, I'd better stay with you. I don't want the position of lieutenant general. I'll follow you to deal with some small things. Saint raised his eyebrows slightly. Li Tianlan raised his head and glanced at Xiao Mahai. Xiao Mahai's eyes were calm. Everything he said and did came from the bottom of his heart. There was no need to lie. Li Tianlan looked at him for a while. You don't want any of these 4 positions? Li Tianlan asked. In fact, these 4 positions are very good. It can even be said that they are all my dreams. Xiao Mahai smiled cheekily and cheekily said, but compared with the positions beside your highness, these 4 positions suddenly don't look good. Li Tianlan. Saint burst out laughing. Well said. Get out. Li Tianlan laughed and scolded him. He kicked Xiao Mahai and said, Get me a bowl of soup. Xiao Mahai smiled and turned to walk out of the restaurant. From today on, you are the butler of Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan looked at his back and said slowly. Chapter 802. Xiao Mahai's figure disappeared at the door of the dining room. His back was light and cheerful, and everyone could see that he was happy and satisfied from the bottom of his heart. He had never thought that he needed to be in a high position in his life. It was important to have self-knowledge and self-control. It just so happened that Xiao Mahai had both of these qualities. He was capable, but not at the top. He was ambitious, but not too ambitious. The military rank of Major General and the position of commander of the army group. At that time, Xiao Mahai's biggest wish was nothing more than to go further and become a lieutenant general, or at most a lieutenant general with a higher title. When he came to the desert prison, his military rank was promoted by 1 level, and he guarded the yellow sand for thousands of miles. His biggest ambition was nothing more than to leave here and not be looked down upon. That was all. Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters, Chief of the General Staff, Commander of the Navy of Jianghu State, Commander of the Blood Battalion. Each of these positions was more prominent than the other. These were all figures standing at the top of the military. Xiao Mahai believed that he was qualified for these positions, but just as he said, he was cautious and conscientious, as if he was walking on thin ice. This was not the feeling he liked. These positions were too heavy, and he felt that they were not suitable for him. He just wanted to leave the desert prison. If he could follow Li Tianlan, that would be the best. Not to mention Li Tianlan's future position. Even now, his position was not bad if he followed Li Tianlan. It didn't matter if he was a butler, a servant, or a servant. In more than a year, he didn't feel that Li Tianlan looked down on him. As long as Li Tianlan didn't look down on him, no one dared to look down on him at all. He was the butler of Emperor Dong's palace. He was really competent for this position, and he could do it very happily. This was the best situation. Li Tianlan watched his back disappear, shook his head slightly, glanced at Saint on the screen of the mobile phone, and whispered, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that he has no ambition. I don't know what he thinks, but even if he is content with the status quo, his current choice is not a loss. Saint laughed. He had already known everything about Xiao Mahai, and he was also very satisfied with Li Tianlan's arrangement. To expand the territory, he naturally needed ambitious generals, and the most important thing for the people around him was to be content. Xiao Mahai was undoubtedly well behaved. Don't look down on yourself and Emperor Dong's palace. The chief steward of Emperor Dong's palace has a high status now. Can you imagine what the chief steward of Emperor Dong's palace will be like in 10 years? What about 20 years later? At that time, the position of general might not necessarily be enough to exchange for the position of butler, let alone the position of chief butler. Li Tianlan nodded. Now that you mention it, I'm looking forward to it. Saint smiled. His eyes were drifting, and he seemed to be yearning. He had seen a dynasty that truly belonged to a person. Even though he had only seen it in a blue notebook, seeing it was seeing it. He knew very well what the housekeeper of such a dynasty meant to the entire dark world. The only pity was that in the dynasty he saw, the chief butler was not Xiao Mahai. How are your injuries? Li Tianlan asked suddenly. Saint did not participate in the fighting and games in the chaos of Eastern Europe, but he was also seriously injured. Not only him, but military counselor, Azura, and general, the three supermasters of Samsara Palace, were also seriously injured. Saint, military advisor, general, Azura. They were the strongest four of the 12 supermasters of Samsara Palace. Their injuries all came from the sword of summer solstice when they raided Mount Dibbing. Just one sword. Azura and general were out of danger not long ago. Their vital signs gradually stabilized, and they were still in a coma. Although military counselor was still walking in the outside world, he had never fought with anyone since then. He was like an ordinary person, and it was not until recently that he began to slowly recover. After that, Saint chose to recuperate in Lin En. Finally, he broke through to the invincible realm in Lin En. But his breakthrough was too intense. Instead of healing, his injuries got worse. Li Tianlan was not sure if he had recovered after more than a year. It's okay. Saint said thoughtfully, it's not a big problem to fight with others, but it will take some time to recover. Will it delay the progress? Li Tianlan frowned. Saint was 40 years old this year. It was not too early for him to break through to the invincible realm at the age of 39. In a few years, his physical peak would pass. In the case of physical decline, it was extremely difficult to go further. Not everyone could be like Wang Tianzong. The next few years were critical for Saint. If his injuries were not healed, it would be difficult for him to completely stabilize his realm and rush into the peak of the invincible realm. It's not a big problem, Saint said slowly. There is still time and my injuries are almost healed. At the very least at this stage, my strength is enough. As for the future, Emperor Dong's palace doesn't care about my strength, but yours. If you are invincible in the world, it doesn't matter if I stop here. Li Tianlan frowned and didn't say much. It seemed that since he entered the desert prison, the expectations of the people around him were too high. So high that even they themselves were a little negative. But such feelings, Li Tianlan had no solution at the moment. This was a problem of mentality, which could not be solved in a few words. And for some reason, Li Tianlan always felt that there was some special reason for this kind of negativity. Especially military counselor and Saint. I heard that something happened in Beihai. Saint was silent for a while and asked slowly. This was not a rumor anymore. The general change was around the corner. The president and the prime minister went to the desert prison in person. Wang Xianxia deliberately collided with them. Everyone knew that something would happen in Beihai in the near future, but few people knew what would happen for the time being. Beihai, it's going to be chaotic, Li Tianlan said softly. What about the specifics? Saint was a little curious. The Vatican, East Island, the Jianghu family of South America. Li Tianlan gave a sarcastic smile. It's probably these people. One of the key points should have something to do with Wang Qinglei, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that if these people invade the Wang family of Beihai, it will definitely be a big trouble for Wang Xianxiao now. The Vatican, East Island, the Jianghu family of South America. Saint narrowed his eyes. More than one invincible realm expert. So they need me. Li Tianlan said calmly. Saint glanced at him and nodded. I'll go there then. Although his realm was not stable, he could already fight with others. At this time, he naturally could not flinch. No need. Li Tianlan shook his head. You stay in the hospital to take care of the wounded. I don't want the hospital to be attacked a second time. What about Beihai? Saint hesitated for a moment. Leave it to me. Li Tianlan said calmly and looked at his watch. He looked at his watch and said, in a few hours, Wang Xianxiao will probably arrive in Yuzhou. Contact military counselor and sort out some information that Wang Xianxiao needs and give it to him. Then leave the hospital for a while and go to Beihai. Come back at night. To Beihai? Saint frowned. I'll go. He was a new invincible realm expert in Jianghu state. His every move was watched by everyone. Now he contacted Wang Xianxiao with great fanfare and even went to Beihai with him. When the news came out, one could imagine the shock. Yes, to Beihai. Li Tianlan's voice was resolute, and his pupils were extremely hot. Help me bring back coldness of 9 states. He paused and continued. The sooner the better. I can't wait. Chapter 803. Saint raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Li Tianlan seriously. He nodded slowly and said, "I can leave at any time." Since he became the deputy palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace, or even since he knew Li Tianlan, it was the first time he had seen such eagerness and expectation in Li Tianlan. Take back the coldness of the 9 states. The murderous weapon that had been broken by Shen Yuan Feng in Eastern Europe. The divine weapon that could control the sword intent of the Chosen One. For the time being, Saint could not imagine how amazing the changes would be after Li Tianlan obtained the coldness of 9 states. But he understood the cause and effect between Shen Yuan Feng and the coldness of 9 states. Now it seemed that Li Tianlan had also realized something. Wang Xianxia is willing to use the coldness of 9 states as a bargaining chip. Saint smiled and didn't know what to say. This seemed to be a huge price to pay. But it wasn't too big. But no matter what, Wang Xianxiao's choice this time was decisive enough. Even decisive. The predecessor of coldness of 9 states was the human emperor. The first murderous weapon that had shaken the dark world for hundreds of years. In order to have a divine weapon that could fully unleash his sword intent, Wang Tianzong decisively cast the human emperor into the coldness of the 9 states. There was actually no difference. After all, the material was the same. The only thing that changed was the shape. The energy requirements of the coldness of the 9 states would not change. In this state, the coldness of the 9 states could bear Wang Tianzong's sword energy, and could also be used as a murderous weapon. There might be some trade-offs, but this was obviously not something that Saint could know. Therefore, when the human emperor became the coldness of the 9 states, it might be slightly different from the human emperor, but in essence, it was still a murderous weapon and something that Shen Yuanfeng needed. For the Wang family of Beihai, the role of the human emperor was not significant in the following period. During the final battle of Heaven Capital, human emperor had already opened fire on the border of Zhongzhou state. The transformation from Ren Huang to coldness of 9 states had exhausted the energy accumulated over the past 3 years. Moreover, after coldness of 9 states was cut off by Shen Yuanfeng, it was not easy to repair it. If he kept coldness of 9 states, it could be expected that within 10 years, this divine weapon would not be of much use. Now the Wang family of Beihai was betting on the next few years. They wanted to get through this crisis. When Wang Tianzong recovered from his injury, it would be a new world. Therefore, Wang Xianxiao handed over the coldness of 9 states, which was temporarily useless to North Sea, without any hesitation. Li Tianlan replied with a and did not express any opinion. He just subconsciously adjusted his sitting posture. His heart was obviously not calm, which was an extremely rare emotion for him. He had the kind of anticipation and restlessness that didn't want to wait for even a second longer. When he was a child, he stood in the camp of the Li family and looked up at the star flag and thought about the future of the Li family. Soon after he came to Huiting at the beginning of the year, he came out of the Sky Academy and was pushed onto the sofa by Qin Weibai in that villa. Then it was now. Coldness of the 9 states. Human emperor. It belonged to the Wang family of Beihai. But Shen Yuanfeng was his. He had enough power to decide Shen Yuanfeng's direction. Li Tianlan subconsciously raised his hand and clenched it. The saints were slightly stunned when they saw this posture. This posture didn't seem like he was holding a sword. In a trance, it felt like he was holding the entire world in his hands. Li Tianlan looked at Saint calmly and said, "Don't let anything happen." Saint's heart trembled and he nodded solemnly. "Don't worry." Li Tianlan hung up the video call and looked in the direction of Beihai, waiting for the broken coldness of 9 states. The Shen Yuan sword appeared beside him and slowly rotated around him. Li Tianlan stared deeply at the sword, and his eyes sparkled. This kind of light was just like the first time Li Huaqing saw him. With light footsteps, Qin Weibai walked into the restaurant with a bowl of soup. Her soft casual clothes made her look indescribably lazy, and her ruddy face was more charming and enchanting than before. Wang Xianxiao left? Qin Weibai placed the soup in front of Li Tianlan and asked curiously. Li Tianlan nodded silently and said, "What about Xiao Mahai? I happened to meet him, so I ordered lunch and asked him to go to the kitchen to prepare." Qin Weibai leaned against Li Tianlan and said lazily, "How was Beihai's offer?" "Very good." Li Tianlan said bluntly, "It was done in one step, better than expected." "What's better?" Qin Weibai glanced at Li Tianlan curiously. "Coldness of 9 states." Li Tianlan said quietly, This is the condition I added, and Wang Xianxia agreed. Qin Weibai's eyes lit up and she sat up straight. So, can Shen Yuan Feng evolve again? It still needs some research, but the human emperor is relatively special among the murderous weapons. If all murderous weapons come from a piece of metal, the human emperor is closer to the core of that piece of metal, like a heart, and has strong energy. Li Tianlan glanced at Qin Weibai. He said softly. When he fought with Shen Yuan Feng in the desert, he discovered Shen Yuan Feng's secret. When he came back, he asked Qin Weibai about it in detail, but Qin Weibai said that she did not know what was going on. Li Tianlan did not meditate for the past 2 nights, nor did he study Shen Yuan Feng. He was busy bullying Qin Weibai, so how could he have time to care about this? But what was certain was that Shen Yuan Feng did need the energy of the murderous weapon in any case. Is there enough time? Qin Weibai thought for a while and asked softly. It should be about time. Li Tianlan thought for a while and said, Jianghu State still needs some time to prepare. As for Beihai, we can slow down the information we provide him. It's not a big problem. Qin Weibai answered obediently and suddenly asked, What will change this time? Li Tianlan paused and shook his head. It should make it more complete, right? What about for you? Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan with quiet eyes. What about for Beihai? For me, it's not very useful, but for Beihai, it's critical. He looked out the window at the endless yellow sand, thinking about when the situation would break out. After a long silence, he said softly, I'm going to raise the sword. Then I'll stay here with you. Qin Weibai smiled sweetly. He couldn't accompany her more, so she would stay with him. Li Tianlan smiled and gently touched Qin Weibai's hair. Don't mess it up. Qin Weibai scratched the back of Li Tianlan's hand and took care of her casually tied black hair. Li Tianlan snapped his fingers. In the subtle light, a subtle light flickered and slowly extended. Finally, it turned into a crystal-clear rose that looked beautiful and gorgeous. This is... Qin Weibai opened her eyes wide and looked at Li Tianlan. For a moment, she even forgot to breathe. She looked at Li Tianlan and then at the rose. The look in her eyes became more and more complicated. The footsteps of fate seemed to come with an irresistible force. Many years ago or many years later, the man named Dongqing Huangtu was brought over by this force. And now, Li Tianlan finally came to this step. The crystal rose sparkled in Li Tianlan's hand. All the details became more and more perfect, vivid, like the most exquisite work of art, priceless. Li Tianlan gently inserted the rose into Qin Weibai's hair, nodded with satisfaction, and said with a smile, It's beautiful. Chapter 804. Qin Weibai gently touched the rose on her head. Her eyes were pure and soft. This is the first time you've sent me flowers. She smiled gently. The delicate, illusory rose exuded real warmth in her hand. Qin Weibai looked very happy. I like it very much. If there is a chance in the future, I will give you all the flowers in the world. Li Tianlan's voice was soft, and he made an almost absurd promise. But his eyes were serious and persistent. Qin Weibai was in a trance for a moment. She remembered a story. A story from many years ago. The man who had been almost invincible once promised so. Divine weapons should be given to heroes, and flowers should be matched with beauties. He said he would give her all the roses in the world at their wedding. That year, the warrant signed by His Majesty dynasty spread throughout the dark world and all the countries in the world that produced roses. That year, roses became a luxury all over the world. That year, there was a rain of flowers. From Jianghu State to Italy. Across the 2 continents of Europe and Asia, across mountains and seas, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, countless rose petals were scattered in the sky for tens of thousands of miles, covering the earth and the sea, from Jianghu State all the way to the Holy Land. It was an indescribable rain of flowers. It was romantic, but with an absolute scorching madness and love. But ironically, the groom who did all this did not find his bride at the end. The colorful rain of flowers fell on the earth and the sea, and finally dissipated in the earth and the deep sea. Qin Weibai lowered her head and whispered, This time, I only need 1 flower. That's enough. Not enough. Li Tianlan shook his head. Qin Weibai pulled the chair closer to Li Tianlan and finally leaned into his arms. The rose was quiet in her hair. It was so exquisite that it was almost unreal, but it really existed, so real that it was a little unreal. Li Tianlan put his arm around her shoulder and touched the rose with the other hand. In a slight sound, a string of equally beautiful and incredible crystals appeared where the petals were connected. The crystals fell on the rose and swayed gently with Qin Weibai's breath, looking much more vivid. "It's beautiful," Li Tianlan whispered. Qin Weibai looked up at Li Tianlan and reached out to touch his face. Her eyes were blurred, and she giggled. "Do you want me to reward you again?" Li Tianlan was a little excited, but that was it. Agitated, he shook his head and teased, "I've been squeezed dry by you. Bad people." Qin Weibai gently grabbed Li Tianlan's ear and whispered, "It's you who bullied me." Li Tianlan grabbed her little hand and kissed it. He whispered, "Old Xiao is here." Qin Weibai's eyes became clear for a moment, and she sat up straight. Xiao Mahai walked over with a box of food, his face full of smiles. Li Tianlan scooped a bowl of soup for himself and accompanied Qin Weibai to drink unhurriedly. "Xiao Qing is not bad," he suddenly said. "Follow Xiao Bai from now on. She needs someone to take care of her while she's here." Xiao Mahai was stunned and nodded subconsciously. Then he said hesitantly, "Your Highness, my sister. Put away your messy thoughts and tell her to go back. She's already married. What's the point of sending me to my side?" Li Tianlan shook his head. "I don't need anyone to take care of me. I'm going to be quiet for a while. Find me a dormitory later. You don't have to deliberately arrange anything. You'll be in charge of my meals from now on." "Okay." Xiao Mahai nodded subconsciously. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Li Tianlan didn't explain anything. His time in the desert prison had entered a countdown. At the latest 1 year, at the shortest, he would leave here in a few months. There was not much time left for him. He needed to adjust his state so that he could truly stand in his current peak state. Whether it was for Emperor Dong's palace or for the chaos that the Wang family of Beihai would face next, he needed to make a choice and face everything with the strongest posture. So he had to raise his sword. The Lin clan was hidden from the world. And the current patriarch of the Lin clan was now sitting beside him obediently. After leaving the desert prison, Li Tianlan had to let everyone know that in the dark world, whether it was clear sky or shadow, he was the real #1 person in the dark world. Xiao Mahai turned and left the restaurant. Qin Weibai sat beside him and ate rice. She whispered, "Do you feel the pressure?" "What pressure?" Li Tianlan was a little confused. "The Vatican, the Jianghu family of South America, East Island," Qin Weibai said softly. "If you were in the state you were in a year ago, even with Shen Yuanfeng, your strength would be slightly worse than Marade's. You should be on par with Tianhai Wuji and slightly better than Yagyu Kurumi. Of course, if you go all out, the result is hard to say. As for now," she paused and whispered, "Beihai's current situation is not very optimistic. If you want to carry it by yourself, you will be under a lot of pressure." "It's okay." Li Tianlan smiled. After all, Qin Weibai didn't understand martial arts. These analyses came from others, so it was inevitable that they were not accurate enough. Even if they were accurate, it was him and Shen Yuanfeng a year ago, not now. "It's okay. Don't worry," he said softly. Qin Weibai hesitated and whispered, "It's not that we can't find help." "Who?" Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. He knew some invincible realm experts who were willing to help him. But now there was basically no one who could help. Tribulation was unconscious, and Situ Tsongyue had not recovered from her serious injury. After all, Saint represented Mount Shu. He could become the deputy palace master of Emperor Dong's palace, but it was not appropriate for him to participate in the affairs of Beihai. Only he could come forward. Northern Europe, the Dark Nights. Qin Weibai whispered, "Flaming fire is there, and the palace master hasn't." She hesitated and continued, "Before the palace master died, Flaming Fire played the role of the master of Samsara Palace unless it was necessary. Her strength is not bad. Even if she can't compare with Moraid, at least she is enough to hold Yagyu Kurumi, and your pressure will be much less." "Flaming Fire," Li Tianlan murmured to himself and whispered, "How are she and Alpha?" "Alpha has woken up, but it's hard for him to recover from his serious injury in a short time. Flaming Fire's injury is basically healed, but she rarely contacts us. The palace master died. She is angry with you, me, and many people. But if you are in trouble, she will definitely help. Qin Weibai whispered. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and finally shook his head. No, I can solve it. Don't be careless. Qin Weibai stared at Li Tianlan's face. If there were no accidents, the next year or two would be the most critical period for Li Tianlan. She didn't want any accidents to happen to him. In the current dark world, there are very few people who are qualified to be your enemy, but each of them is not easy to deal with. You're wrong. Li Tianlan looked at her quietly. Everyone who thinks so is wrong. His tone was calm, but there was extreme confidence between the lines. That was not arrogance. It was pure confidence. There are no enemies under my sword. Li Tianlan whispered. Only non-entities. Chapter 805. After lunch, Xiao Mahai had already prepared a new dormitory for Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was very satisfied with it. He ordered that the prison would not entertain outsiders in the near future. He simply shook Qin Weibai's hand, and then began his sword training career that might last for a few months or even a year. Both Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai had absolute confidence in the sword that they had nurtured for a long time and the firmest will. Qin Weibai returned to Li Tianlan's original dormitory. The air in the dormitory still lingered with a lingering scent of romance. She opened the window, sat in front of the computer, thought for a moment, and entered a website. Layers of passwords completely isolated all the possibility of being tracked and monitored. A complicated and exquisite web page appeared in front of Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai pursed her lips, and her dreamy perfect face was calm and rational. She quickly issued a series of orders. On the web page, windows popped up one after another and quickly closed. After doing all this, Qin Weibai opened the communication subsystem of the website and sent a few invitations with her slender fingers. Saint's figure appeared on the communication screen first. The screen began to separate. It separated into 3 small screens. Saint was in the middle. Qin Weibai glanced at him and nodded. The next second, the screen on the left lit up, and Military Counselor greeted them with an easygoing smile. I thought you were at the airport now. Saint glanced at Military Counselor and raised his eyebrows. I did. It's not a big deal. Why would I go there? If there is something, it can't be said in an occasion like the airport. Military Counselor shook his head carelessly and suddenly laughed. Are you bored? One is in the hospital, and the other is in the prison. I found a good game recently, and I recommend it to you. Saint looked at his careless state and shook his head. Hua Zhengyang, one of the 9 counselors of Jianghu State and the leader of the academics, the vice minister of the cabinet, made a high-profile inspection of Huiting, and before his departure, he hoped to have a more in-depth discussion with Military Counselor. Everyone could see that Military Counselor was Hua Zhengyang's key goal this time. However, when it came to Military Counselor, it became not a big deal, even less important than his game. It's not necessary. Qin Weibai said blandly, even if you want to express your attitude, you don't have to deliberately snub him. After all, he is a director of Jianghu State. What's the benefit of offending him? Of course I would have dealt with him in the past, but now I'm really too lazy to do anything. So what if I offend him? Wait for me to back off. If I do, I'll be like a wild crane, and I can't be bothered to serve these so-called giants. The military advisor shook his head. Saint wanted to say something but stopped. In the end, he did not say anything. Qin Weibai stopped talking. The third small screen on the screen was temporarily unconnected, and the screen was pitch black. How's Tianlan's negotiation with them? Military Counselor asked. We've temporarily stabilized the council. Qin Weibai looked at the screen that was still dark and said slowly, Tianlan has decided to cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai. The Wang family of Beihai has agreed to all the conditions we expected and used the broken coldness of 9 states as a bargaining chip. Tianlan has begun to raise the sword. What changes will there be? Military Counselor's eyes lit up. Without a doubt, he was asking about the changes that the coldness of 9 states had made to Shenyuan Feng. Qin Weibai did not say anything. She glanced at Saint. She really did not understand martial arts. Although Li Tianlan's current realm was low, his sword intent had touched the end of martial arts. Even if she understood martial arts, she could not say what the so-called changes would be. Only Saint could understand a little. It was not because he was an invincible realm expert. It was because he was Saint. The changes are not that big. Saint thought for a moment and analyzed all kinds of possibilities. But it should be crucial to Beihai. It depends on how well the palace master raises the sword. It's nothing more than the difference between the power of one sword and the power of one person. Qin Weibai subconsciously touched the rose on her head. She touched the petals and could feel that Li Tianlan was watching the conversation here through the rose. Qin Weibai smiled and felt a little relieved. What is this? Military counselor looked at the rose and was a little curious. Where did you buy it? Give me one too, but I want lilies. I want some lilies. This is the palace master's eyes, Saint said with a faint smile. Even if he is not here, he can see your every move now. So if you talk about retiring or something, be careful that he will really beat you up when he sees you. Saint's face stiffened for a moment. He gave a hollow laugh and said hello. Hello, Your Highness. The incredibly delicate rose moved, and the crystal on its stem shook slightly, becoming more and more vivid. Click! A faint noise suddenly rang out. There was an intermittent sound from the third small screen. The screen was still dark, but it showed that it was connected. A somewhat hoarse voice sounded. It seemed to deliberately hide its voice. What's the matter? Saint and military counselor were quiet for a moment. Qin Weibai's eyes flickered, and she asked, how is the situation in Beihai? In the dark screen, the voice was silent for a moment, and then he laughed in a low voice. The undercurrent is turbulent. I have confirmed the whereabouts of more than 2,000 people, all of whom are elites. The Jianghu family of South America, Knights Templars, Jifeng Sword Training School, and Wuji Palace all have elites lurking. It can be said that these families have put in a lot of effort. According to our analysis, in a few months, they can even stuff tens of thousands of people in Beihai, maybe even more. Tens of thousands of elites are at least in the ice-condensing realm. How large of a Beihai core can they be? He paused and tooted. For Beihai province, this is definitely a disaster, and it can even be said to be the only disaster in their history. More than 10,000 people. Military counselor frowned. It's not easy to hide so many people. No matter how Wang Xiaoyao manages, it can't be foolproof. These people can't lurk for long, and they will definitely be exposed. What does that matter? In the dark screen, the man laughed in a low voice. Even if they are exposed, the Wang family of Beihai can't deal with so many people in a short time. At that time, the whole Beihai will be covered with blood, and the trust of Beihai people in the Beihai government and Mount Dibing will drop to the lowest point. The 7 sword-holding families will suffer heavy losses, or even be completely wiped out. These things only need an outbreak, not a tug of war. It's hard for Beihai to react. Once it happens, Zhongzhou state can forcefully intervene in everything in Beihai. There's nothing more perfect than this. Saint and military counselor were silent. Qin Weibai was also silent. After a long time, Qin Weibai breathed a sigh of relief and said calmly, "Don't think Beihai is too simple." Yes. The hoarse voice was non-committal. What's the attitude of the Samsara Palace? Hua Zhengyang's inspection of Huiting should be for military counselor, right? They attach great importance to you, except for 3 visits to the thatched cottage. Our attitude is Tianlan's attitude. Qin Weibai's voice was cold. Your young master is ready to fully cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai. After a short silence, the voice murmured, "Fully cooperate?" Yes. Qin Weibai nodded. Fully cooperate. Tricky. In the dark, he said in a deep voice. So Tianlan needs time. Today, I need you to hand over to military counselor. Whether it's intelligence or resources, we can share them. In any case, we must temporarily stop the actions of the major forces. Chapter 806. Saint had always been a very generous person. He would never hide anything that was destined to be unconcealable. Therefore, after confirming the relationship between Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai, Saint had directly contacted Wang Xianxia an hour before his helicopter arrived in Yuzhou. Wang Xianxia was even more generous. The most convenient thing about helicopters was that they didn't have to land at the airport. As the rotors whistled, the helicopter landed directly on the hospital's helipad. Wang Xianxia walked out of the cabin and looked at Saint with a smile. Saint nodded. Both sides seemed satisfied with each other's attitude. "Your Highness, if there's nothing else, shall we depart now?" Wang Xianxia asked directly, without any nonsense or courtesy. If they set off now, they could catch up with dinner when they arrived at Mount Dibbing. "Sure." After saying that, Saint walked directly into the helicopter. The helicopter started to take off. Under the gaze of numerous people, it whizzed across the sky of Yuzhou province. They came and went in a hurry. This was the first time Wang Xianxiao had come to Yuzhou since he became the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. It took less than 5 minutes. But he took away the only new invincible realm expert in Jianghu state. This news swept over the entire Yuzhou city like a hurricane. Before the helicopter left Yuzhou province, some big figures in high places had already known this news. Everyone's attention was not on Saint. Saint boarded the plane of the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai and headed for Beihai province. Countless people were guessing the intentions of the young prodigy who was temporarily imprisoned in the desert prison. The president, the prime minister, and the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai went to the desert prison at the same time. But no one knew the specific results for the time being. The actions of the saints were like a signal that made many people start to think about various possibilities. Chen Fengqing once again appeared in the Golden Autumn Pavilion of the Hidden Dragon Sea, which was known as the office of the president. Li Huaqing pushed away a meeting that had already been arranged and personally received Chen Fengqing. The spacious office was filled with the fragrance of tea. The two giants who stood at the peak of Jianghu state sat face to face. The atmosphere was silent and depressing, gloomy and a little scary. What does that mean? Chen Fengqing remained silent for a long time before asking softly. Probing. Li Huaqing's voice was calm. But even the usually calm expression in his eyes now had a hint of fear. There was a dark haze. Probe. Chen Fengqing raised an eyebrow. Non-committal. I don't think he can make up his mind in such a short time. What can North Sea give him? Unless Wang Xianxiao is willing to give him the entire Beihai. Li Huaqing said lightly. Chen Fengqing leaned back and rubbed his temples. He let out a long sigh, not hiding his exhaustion at all. Li Tianlan and Wang Xianxiao. Mount Dibbing. East Imperial Palace. 2 people and 2 forces really took up too much of his energy. This was really related to the future pattern of Jianghu state. His expectations were so great that he was even unwilling to bear any bad risks. To be honest, Chen Fengqing's mentality was out of balance. He knew this, but he couldn't control his irritation. Comrade Zhang Yang inspected Huiting, but the one in Huiting didn't go to the airport. Does this mean that he's not optimistic about our operation? It can even be said that some international powers are not optimistic about our operation? Chen Fengqing said softly. Maybe he's just not willing to take too many risks. In the field he's best at, the Wang family of Beihai is no weaker than him, or even stronger. And we can never give too many benefits to people like him, let alone some core things. So it's understandable that he's not willing to get involved. Li Huaqing's voice was flat. Then why did Saint leave with Wang Xianxiao? Chen Fengqing's eyes were gloomy. We just came back. If Wang Xianxiao didn't talk to Li Tianlan, how could Saint be so blatant? Probe. Does he really think that Jianghu state can't punish him now? Li Huaqing glanced at him silently and said with a poker face, What are you going to do? The other party has made a move. No matter what his purpose is, we can't do nothing. Chen Fengqing said flatly, Some plans for Tiannan can be implemented. They want to help, but we must reduce it appropriately to show Li Tianlan our determination and attitude. Suspend the supply of some weapons and armaments that have been finalized recently. Li Huaqing frowned. At this time, if we act too aggressively, we can only let him get closer to Beihai. Then continue to reduce the aid. Chen Fengqing was expressionless. At the same time, speed up the plan for Beihai. He hasn't broken through to the invincible realm, and his combat capability is limited. The strength of Emperor Dong's palace is also limited. Besides, he has promised us that he will stay in prison during the chaos in Beihai. In this case, let the chaos in Beihai break out earlier. Are you worried that his promise to us is to buy time for him to break through to the invincible realm? Li Huaqing raised his eyebrows. I'm not worried about that. Chen Fengqing's tone was cold. On the contrary, I'm looking forward to it. I will continue to reduce the aid to Shenyuan City, and he will stay in prison. This is his promise. If he dares to break it, it means that he officially refuses our proposal. Kunlun City can't satisfy his appetite. What about the heavenly sun? Chen Fengqing said in a low voice. He's ambitious and deserves to be killed. Li Huaqing's body shook slightly. Deserve to be killed? He narrowed his eyes tightly and pondered. Now Emperor Dong's palace is very dangerous. He just doesn't know it. Li Tianlan has potential, but it doesn't mean that Emperor Dong's palace has the strength of the Wang family of Beihai. With the strength of Jianghu state, if they really want to attack Emperor Dong's palace, even with Li Tianlan, how long can they hold on? Half a day or a day? If Prime Minister. Li Huaqing suddenly spoke and interrupted Chen Fengqing. Chen Fengqing looked up at him. You're too aggressive. Li Huaqing said in a light tone. Chen Fengqing was stunned. After a long while, he took a deep breath and stopped talking. We all need to calm down. Li Huaqing said. He didn't doubt Chen Fengqing's words. Li Tianlan had great potential. Emperor Dong's palace also had great potential. But if Jianghu state really wanted to destroy Emperor Dong's palace, it didn't even need half a day or a day. An hour was enough. The dense missiles could completely cover every corner of Tiannan. In a few seconds, Tiannan could be turned into purgatory and scorched earth. Under that level of artillery fire, no matter how strong Li Tianlan was, he couldn't survive. It was not a question of whether he could do it or not. It was a question of whether he could do it or not. Jianghu state was the most powerful country in the world. But Jianghu state didn't belong to the two of them. If the two of them really joined forces, don't forget that the army headquarters was still in the hands of Dongqing Wudi. Chen Fengqing was silent for a while and nodded. You're right. It's not suitable to talk about this topic today. Li Huaqing pushed the teacup forward and said slowly, let's talk about something else. Something else? Chen Fengqing looked at him, a little confused. Let's not talk about Beihai or Emperor Dong's palace. Li Huaqing's eyes were a little complicated. Let's talk about Jianghu state. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.